disappear, taken by your mighty flame. The enemy dread and fear when I invoke your name. You sought them out of lions, set Paul and Silas free. As David beat Goliath, you always win for me.
Heresy grows from idleness.
I will raise your name and praise the wonders you have done in all the earth. Jesus is the name above all names. May your kingdom be glorified. Your name is the King of Kings, Emmanuel, Lord of Lords, yes, Alpha and Omega, resurrection and life. You're the one we call the true Almighty God. You're the one we call the true Almighty God. You're the
All right. I'm here, okay? Now calm down. Everybody chill. I'm taking a sip, okay? Sorry, I had to make coffee for my wife, too. Okay? It's not just a me game here. Not just a me game here. How y'all doing this morning? I'm sorry I kept you waiting so I'm notorious on this channel for having 15 to 30 minute starting screens. Okay. I have battle baby. I have children. You understand? The children and a wife. Things happen. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, it's good to see you guys. Welcome in this morning. Hope you guys are prepared. So Why Am I Here is claimed first. Captain Sam is claimed second. The absolutely wonderful and blood sister of mine, Valmont, has claimed third. Then we have Caffeinated Squirrel? Caffeinated Squirrel? Oh, let me get a sip of coffee. With the first Fourth and Beyond, followed by Thunderbird Nix. And then all the rest of you hanging out here. It's good to see you this morning. Welcome in. Thank you for the 20 stream streak, Caffeinated Squirrel, and a 3 stream streak. Why am I here? I'm honored, both of you. Truly. I appreciate it. Thanks for keeping me sipping, John. Good morning, buddy. How are you today? Today's Trevor's 7-year streaming anniversary.
Great. It won't stop.
All right, fine. I'll take another sip. How's the volume on that? Is that loud? My wife was saying I should turn that up. I don't know. Who's Trevor? Why am I here? I probably follow them. For some reason the name's not coming to mind. Also, thank you for your service. Thank you. Why am I here? I appreciate you. God bless you, buddy. Ahoy, my lord. Sammy, welcome in. Father Meme. Brothers, our crusade against the disgusting Xeno must continue. We must destroy the heretic. Or the. Dang it, Twitch. I meant them. I understand. Them. I filled in the heretic. I felt that was more appropriate. But it's good to see you this morning. Welcome in. Also, thank you for the follow. I don't know where you came from, but I appreciate you being here. Help me, I'm stuck doing billing and my brain is turning to goop. I get that. I always do. I do the budget usually after... in the evening or in the morning, depending on, if we've done stuff that day or not. Egged Geese. GC. Welcome in. How are you this morning? Welcome back. What else we got? Eggs, happy late birthday from me. Thank you, Egg. I appreciate that. I appreciate the big 4-0. We're finally middle-aged, which is not a big problem. Trevor has a 48-hour subathon for his 7-year streaming anniversary. Which Trevor? I know several Trevors. Smell of heresy brewing. There's not at all. Impressive indeed. But why are you here? It's good to see you. Caffeinated Squirrel, my dear battle sister. My brain is whoosh. Well, fear not. We're going to be reading some. The Voyage of the Dawn Treader this morning, into the afternoon. Too much coffee? No. She's not a coffee drinker. Caffeinated Squirrel. While caffeinated is in her name, she gets her caffeine from tea. But we're going to be having some green tea later, I'm sure. Too much tedious paperwork. I actually don't like coffee. Yeah, I get that. I don't think. Val, don't you not like coffee? I think my sister doesn't like coffee either. If I remember right. Not really, but Thursdays are usually...
I need some gills at this rate. More water.
Might need some gills at this rate. More water. Maybe I should turn that up. I could turn it up, I just don't know if it will be too loud, right? Where is it? Boom. Play sound. Let's turn it up to... We'll put it at 100, and you guys can tell me... 100%, and you guys tell me if that's too loud. Okay? You guys let me know. Sounds like excuses to me. What do you mean, squirrel? Where? You're just in time, my lord. Yeah. Well, I'm actually an hour late. We were supposed to start at 10, but got up this morning. Me and my wife went for a walk with the baby, and it's a beautiful day out. We walked 3 miles, and then I did a little bit of exercising, made breakfast, and then we were supposed to start at 10, but it's okay. I mean, you do what you can. It's better to be healthy. Made breakfast, made coffee, and here we are. 11. So if we pretend like we were going to start at 11, we're right on time. We're right on time. So it's totally fine. So I'm not the only Marine with the black and gold color screen. I'm a Phantom Templar, and you are? We are the Heavenly Legion, Father Mean. We are the Heavenly Legion. We are a Christian Space Marine Legion. In service to the true immortal Emperor, Jesus Christ, you understand. We will convert the Imperium to righteousness and save them from the depravity of the warp. It is what we plan to do. Our home world is known as Apocrypha, and we travel through what we call the Ethereum, not the Immaterium. So so basically, if the Immaterium was like traveling through hell, the Ethereum is like traveling through heaven. So we are incorruptible by the warp. However, we can be killed. We constantly wage crusades into the Imperium and other sectors of the Segmentum, and it's a really good time. But I am the Primarch, so it's a pleasure to have you here, my lords. Honored to have you. I don't know how you found us, but I welcome you in, indeed. Volume sounds good. Okay, well, we're going to try it at 100 and see if it's too much. My wife was saying it was too quiet.
From idleness.
There's no heresy here, Baines. There is no heresy. Not in my Christian stream. Who made the Redeems sound alert? I did. Red Fire X, Trevor. Okay. Alright, well, if he's on, maybe we'll raid into him. So we're renegades. Technically, against the Imperium, yes, we're renegades. We are not heretics. Well, I guess we would be considered heretics to the cult of the Imperium, but, Christ is king, so who cares? I wish to join your legion, brother. My lord, your presence here has ushered you into our ranks. Welcome to the legion. Welcome to the legion. If you guys wish to join, we have a Discord, by the way. You don't have to do it. I know everybody has a Discord, but you can. You can find updates, announcements. Also, when we do community nights, that's where the Discord chat will be and that sort of thing. You're welcome to join there. Also offer suggestions at your leisure. But I'm glad to have you here. Welcome in. Brother, I must ask you to dab me up. A young man's colloquialism. Let's see, to dab or not to dab. Hey, there you go, son. Well, let's just pretend I'm doing it. I just worked out my arms, so I gotta stay in this position because this is about all the movement I can do right now. No, I'm not doing 20 push-ups right now. I already did 60 this morning.
Look, I have other things to do. Just hydrate.
All right, fine, darling. How's that? What'd you think of that volume? Was that too loud? No, we'll turn down the tunes just a wee bit.
100 push-ups? Somebody wants to do 100 push-ups?
No, it's not 100 push-ups. That's something else. Sounded good to me? Okay. I slapped that hand like it was the wall. Wow. Dang. Nice. I feel thoroughly high-fived. I feel pretty good about that. Hey, Baines. How you guys doing? But, yeah, welcome in, everybody. I'm honored to have you guys here. Hope you guys all prepared. And hello over on YouTube, if anybody's hanging out. Welcome in. We are going to continue reading.
Voyage of the Dawn Treader.
That's right, Battle Princess. Thank you. That's good. That's good. So we are going to continue reading The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, as my daughter stated. The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. So this is the fifth book in the series that we're on. So we've already read The Magician's Nephew, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Horse and His Boy, and Prince Caspian. Yes. So now it is Voyage of the Dawn Treader. So this book follows Prince Caspian. No, she was there. You want to bring the other chair in here, you can have a seat, but keep that door open. And my children are going to be in here listening because they like to hear this story. So, what are we going to do? Sounded good to me. Good. All right, Joe Swanson. Well, yeah.
20 push-ups.
I get that a lot. Stop saying that. It's not 20 push-ups. I have that redeem off right now. Josh, My daughter, she likes to be bossy.
Daddy, I have an idea. What if you did Rico Simmons for one of the voices?
We're not going to talk about the Forbidden Redeem. We're not going to talk about the Forbidden Redeem right now because we are reading. We're reading right now, okay? Yeah, I get, Father Meme, I get that a lot. Like, all right, the poison for Cusco. The poison specially chosen to kill Cusco's poison. We're talking about that poison. But we have redeems on this channel. I do silly voices a lot, and that one is requested quite often. Whether I'm good or I'm bad, you know what? We have fun either way. Doesn't matter, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Let the children stay and enjoy the table along with us. Let them stay and have fun. I'm letting them. It's just that there are rules, correct, children? So if you guys start to fight, what happens? You become banished, and you must watch the stream and listen to the story outside on the iPad. Like those who are cast out in the feast of our Lord. You guys got water? Did you go to the bathroom? You ready?
What's this blue line?
Oh, they can't see that. That's just where... It's like a partition. That's all. Alright, go to the bathroom, get yourself a snack. We're gonna... Dominius! My lord, good morning, battle brother. How are you this fine and glorious day? How is your stream? Guys, make sure you follow Darminius, another noble battle brother in Christ. Very worthy of your time, I assure you. How are you doing, buddy? How was your stream? Because we pulled it out. It's good to have you. What you up to? What you up to? You got your school done today, right?
Yeah. I did science.
Oh. Well, kids are getting ready. 'Tis funny to us, indeed. Well, my great-granddad was a bomber pilot in World War II during Operation Tidal Wave. That's cool. My grandfather was a combat engineer at Normandy. So he was in the army in Normandy, fought all the way from Normandy across through Germany, up into the surrender of the Third Reich. Yeah, Grandpa Tommaso. That's right.
I haven't got my snack.
Down into Italy and everything was pretty great.
I need to go
A lot
get
of really
my
interesting
chips.
stuff there. Want to send one of the kids in here to do something for me while I am baby trapped? Yes. Go help your mother be quiet. Silent. Because the baby is sleeping. Thank you. Thank you, my son. All right. In the meantime, I'll give you guys a quick recap. Wait, my father was an engineer during his day of serving the army as well. Nice. Nice. Glorious work, isn't it, Father? Yes, I served in the Marine Corps. I was in for 8 years. And then I finished. My wife decided that it was enough. I did too. I did not have a good time. I did not have a good time in the Marine Corps. No, but I mean, you're serving. It's not, a vacation. So, wasn't even really a career for me. But it was fine. We got done with that. You help her? Okay. But we'll do a quick recap of the story here. So, Voyage of the Dawn Treader. It starts off basically, you didn't have a good time smushing idiots with fridges? No, I wanted to play my Pokemon game. Dang it! Like I said, I was a huge nerd. It was, still am.
Speaking of Pokemon, we met our friends yesterday. The Wheatleys. Oh wait,
Sit down.
sorry. We met our friends yesterday. Dang it! I'm sorry.
This is why I don't let you talk.
And one of them showed me
Mm-hmm.
this Pokemon
The
card
Pokemon
game,
cards,
And I found a
yeah.
new interest in the Pokemon.
Yep. Have a seat.
Sorry.
So, yeah, my son has gotten bitten by the Pokemon card game itch, so we'll see what we can do.
Yeah.
Maybe for his birthday
Why
we'll
did
get
I
some
just-
Pokemon cards. It'll be fine. Wait, you didn't have a good time smushing idiots? Nah. I mean, there were some fun times, but for the most, my overall experience did not enjoy. You know what I mean? But I mean, I don't know many people who did have a good time. Is every male VTuber I follow on Twitch a veteran of some sort? Because you're the third dude I've met on here who served in the army. I don't know. I was in the Marines, so let's see. I know of a few who are veterans. I know many who are not, so I don't think it's every single one. No. I personally served in the Marines. There was Captain Joseph was Air Force, right? Joseph right here, was it Air Force? I forgot. I'm pretty sure it was Air Force. Then there's also Miss Montana Misfit's husband, Mr. Montana Misfit. He was in the Army. So, geez, what is my luck? Pretty good, huh? Pretty good. It could be the tag, too. I think I have a veteran tag on there. I'm also part of, like, the veterans team. So, most likely, what it is, Father Meme, is that you went to a veteran stream. They had some sort of tag. And if you found me through that, or these other streamers through that, they might also have that tag and you're recommended. You know what I mean? It's most likely what it is. Similar if you're searching for the Christian tag. You know, I'll pop up along with other people who have that tag. So, could be that. Yeah, Air Force. Okay, I knew I remembered right. I almost said Navy, Kayla, but I thought, you know, he might throw something at me because, you know, most people who aren't Navy don't like to be referred to as Navy. Anyway, quick recap of Voyage of the Dawn Treader thus far. So, the Pevensies, two of the Pevensey children from the other books, have returned to Narnia along with their cousin Eustace. Now, Eustace is a detestable little child. He is not at all polite, nice, or kind. He's rude, self-absorbed, know-it-all, and just a general bully. He's just a general bully. Edmund and Lucy came to stay with him and his parents. Don't spill that. Okay. Came to stay with his, the parents and everything. While they were in one of the rooms in the house, it was a picture of a beautiful ship on a sea, and Eustace was in there kind of making fun of him, and the sea came to life, and the water started splashing into the room, and the magic of Narnia called Lucy and Edmund back to Narnia once again, but it also dragged in Eustace. So all three of them found themselves suddenly in this vast ocean next to a Narnian ship called the Dawn Treader. And who was aboard but Captain, or Prince Caspian, who's now King Caspian of Narnia. He's a few years older. It's been 3 years since they were there, but it's only been a year in our world. And so Edmund and Lucy wind up on board, and they greet Caspian from the previous book, and they're all joyous. And they wind up sailing with him, and to the Lonely Islands and beyond. So you find out that Caspian and the crew, along with Reepicheep and a bunch of others, are trying to sail to the utter east toward Aslan's country and discover the islands that are a part of Narnia, such as the Lonely Islands, in search of the Lords Restamar, Roop, and a bunch. There's like 7 lords. There's 7 lords that they're looking for, in order to that Caspian's uncle Miraz had sent off because they weren't loyal to him, and so he's looking for those lords. We found one of them. He had taken up residence in the Lonely Islands and was kind of just settled down and married. But Caspian just named him Lord of Duke of the Lonely Islands after deposing the corrupt governor who was, selling slaves and doing all kinds of detestable things in the name of commerce. And so now they have repaired, and now they're sailing on further in. So they just landed on an island to repair the ship after a big storm, and Eustace had wandered off to avoid doing some work. So he tumbled down into a valley, and now he doesn't know where he is, and that is where the chapter picks up in chapter 6. So I hope that if you have any questions, let me know, and we'll get started here in just a second. The gal who recommended you to me was the gal whose stream we both visited the stream of. He sounds like, are you talking about Yenza? He sounds like a type of kid who could use a good belt to the back. I'm simply refusing to curse because there are children present. Thank you, Father Meme. Thank you. Appreciate that. We try not to use foul language on this channel simply because I have children that, there's my children here. We try to keep it safe for work, but Unless it's something super, super crass, you know, the bot shouldn't get you, you know, just, you know, it'd be all right. But I'm honored to have you here. Let's see. Granddad was a B-24 pilot in World War II doing Operation Tidal Wave. Yeah, I read that. Do we know the names of the other 6 lords? It was, if I remember right... Let me see if I can find it again. I know it was Mavramorn, Restamar, Roop. Gosh, where was it? Let me see if I can find it, because I believe... Yeah, it'd probably be faster than me for just look it up. Yeah, it'd probably be faster. I'll look it up. Hold on, everybody. Just chill. I'm going to look it up. The 7 Lords of the Dawn Treader. Let's see, Lord Byrne. So Lord Byrne was the one who he just named Governor of the Lonely Islands. Lord Octesian, Lord Restamar, Lord Roop, Lord Mavramorn, Revillion, and Argos. That's their names. So Byrne, Octesian, Restamar, Roop, Mavramorn, Revillion, and Argos. So those are the 7 lords of Narnia that we are in search of right now. Oh no, ads! Oh, what a terrible timing for that. What a terrible time for that. Alright, hold on. Okay, I'm back from the ads. Thank you for the target names. Did you get them? Did you hear the names of the lords, or were you stuck in ads? I want to make sure you guys heard it. If not, I'll read them again. But we'll see where we go. All right, everybody. So welcome in, guys. Where is the chat?
Welcome in, lords and ladies of the Heavenly Legion.
That's right. For YouTube. I don't see the chat for YouTube. Stream settings. I'm sorry, YouTube. I don't see the chat for you guys, but I'm glad you're here. I don't know why I can't see it. Where is you? Oh, there it is. Okay. Crafty Kitty, I see you now. Hello, Rico. Good to see you, Crafty Kitty. Welcome in. Doki, I see you over there on YouTube. Welcome in. I have to head out, Rico. Have a blessed stream. Okay, good to see you. Good. I'm glad you were here. Thanks for hanging. I appreciate y'all. And again, if you guys want to hang out in the YouTube channel, you can as well. We are streaming this to the Rico's Rico Gaming channel. And you guys are welcome to check that out, but don't feel like you have to. We'll post clips and funny stuff over there. But there you go. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Let's see. I'll put this here. So buckle in. We're going to continue reading the Voyage of the Dawn Treader. So again, we're on chapter 6. Eustace has just fallen into a valley. And he he was trying to run back because he was being lazy. Was trying to catch a nap. But then he had a horrible thought that they would leave without him because they don't like him because he's so detestable. And he was fleeing down the hill, down the little mountain there, trying to get back to the ship that they were all working hard to repair, and found himself lost at the bottom of a valley. Okay, you guys ready? Okay. So, chapter 6, The Adventures of Eustace. I'm starting. At that very moment, the others were washing hands and faces in the river, and generally getting ready for dinner and a rest. The 3 best archers had gone up into the hills north of the bay, and returned laden with a pair of wild goats, which were now roasting over a fire. Caspian had ordered a cask of wine ashore, strong wine of Arkenland, which had to be mixed with water before you drank it, so there would be plenty for all. The work had gone well so far, and it was a merry meal. Only after the second helping of goat did Edmund say, "Where's that blighter Eustace?" Meanwhile, Eustace stared round the unknown valley. It was so narrow and deep, and the precipices which surrounded it so sheer that it was like a huge pit or trench. The floor was grassy through strewn with rocks, and here and there Eustace saw black burnt patches, like those you see on the sides of a railway embankment in a dry summer. About 15 yards away from him was a pool of clear, smooth water. There was, at first, nothing else at all in the valley. Not an animal, not a bird, not an insect. The sun beat down and grim peaks and horns of mountains peered over the valley's edge. Eustace realized, of course, that in the fog he had come down the wrong side of the ridge, so he turned at once to see about getting back. But as soon as he had looked, he shuddered. Apparently, he had by amazing luck found the only possible way down. A long, green spit of land, horribly steep and narrow, with precipices on either side. There was no other possible way of getting back. But could he do it now that he saw what it was really like? His head swam at the very thought of it. He turned round again, thinking that at any rate he'd better have a good drink from the pool first. But as soon as he had turned and before he had taken a step forward into the valley, he heard a noise behind him. It was only a small noise, but it sounded loud in that immense silence. It froze him dead still where he stood for a second, and then he slewed round his neck and looked. At the bottom of the cliff, a little on his left hand down, was a low, dark hole. The entrance to a cave, perhaps. And out of this 2 thin wisps of smoke were coming, and the loose stones just beneath the dark hollow were moving. That was the noise he had heard, just as if something were crawling in the dark behind them. Something was crawling. Worse still, something was coming out. Edmund or Lucy, or you would have guessed it at once, but Eustace had read none of the right books. The thing that came out of the cave was something he had never imagined. A long, lead-colored snout. Dull red eyes, no feathers or fur, a long, lithe body that trailed on the ground, legs whose elbows went up higher than its back like a spider's cruel claws, bat wings that made a rasping noise on the stone, yards of tail, and the lines of smoke were coming from its 2 nostrils. He never said the word dragon to himself, nor would it have made things any better if he had. But perhaps if he had known something about dragons, he would have been a little surprised at this dragon's behavior. It did not sit up and clap its wings, nor did it shoot out a stream of flame from its mouth. The smoke from its nostrils was like the smoke of a fire that will not last much longer, nor did it seem to have noticed Eustace. It moved very slowly towards the pool, slowly and with many pauses. Even in his fear, Eustace felt that it was an old, sad creature. He wondered if he dared make a dash for the ascent, but it might look round if he made any noise. It might come more to life. Perhaps it was only shamming. Anyway, what was the use of trying to escape by climbing from a creature that could fly? It reached the pool and slid its horribly scaly chin down over the gravel to drink. But before it had drunk, there came from it a great croaking or clanging cry, and after a few twitches and convulsions, it rolled around onto its side and lay perfectly still with one claw in the air. A little dark blood gushed from its wide open mouth. The smoke from its nostrils turned black for a moment and then floated away. No more came. For a long time, Eustace did not dare to move. Perhaps this was the brute's trick, the way it lured travelers to their doom. But one couldn't wait forever. He took a step nearer, and then 2 steps, and halted again. The dragon remained motionless. He noticed, too, that the red fire had gone out of its eyes. At last he came up to it. He was quite sure now that it was dead. With a shudder, he touched it. Nothing happened. The relief was so great that Eustace almost laughed out loud. He began to feel as if he had fought and killed the dragon instead of merely seeing it die. He stepped over it and went to the pool for his drink, for the heat was getting unbearable. He was not surprised when he heard a peal of thunder, Almost immediately afterward, the sun disappeared, and before he had finished his drink, big drops of rain were falling. The climate of this island was a very unpleasant one. In less than a minute, Eustace was wet to the skin and half blinded with such rain as one never sees in Europe. There was no use trying to climb out of the valley as long as this lasted. He bolted for the only shelter in sight, the dragon's cave. There he lay down and tried to get his breath. Most of us know what we should expect to find in a dragon's lair, but as I said before, Eustace had read only the wrong books. They had a lot to say about exports and imports and governments and drains, but they were weak on dragons. That is why he was so puzzled at the surface on which he was lying. Parts of it were too prickly to be stones and too hard to be thorns, and there seemed to be a great many round, flat things, and it all clinked when he moved. There was light enough at the cave's mouth to examine it by. And of course, Eustace found it to be what any of us could have told him in advance. Treasure. There were crowns, those were the prickly things. Coins, rings, bracelets, ingots, cups, plates, and gems. Eustace, unlike most boys, never thought much of treasure. But he saw at once the use it would be in this new world which he had so foolishly stumbled into through the picture in Lucy's bedroom at home. "They don't have any tax here," he said, "and you don't have to give treasure to the government. With some of this stuff, I could have quite a decent time here, perhaps in Kilorman. It sounds the least phony of these countries. I wonder how much I can carry. Oh, that bracelet now. Those things in it are probably diamonds. Oh, I'll slip that on my own wrist. Oh, too big. But not if I push it right up here above my elbow. Then fill my pockets with diamonds. Oh, that's easier than gold. I wonder when this infernal rain's going to let up." Oh, he got into a less uncomfortable part of the pile, where it was mostly coins, and settled down to wait. But a bad fright when once it was over, and especially a bad fright following a mountain walk, leaves you very tired. Eustace fell asleep. By the time he was sound asleep and snoring, the others had finished dinner and become seriously alarmed about him. They shouted, "Eustace! Eustace! Ooh!" till they were hoarse, and Caspian blew his horn. "Oh, he's nowhere near. Oh, he'd have heard that," said Lucy with a white face. "Oh, confound the fellow," said Edmund. "What on earth did he want to slink away like this for?" "Oh, but we must do something," said Lucy. "He may have got lost, or fallen into a hole, or been captured by savages." "Oh, killed by wild beasts, more like," said Drinian. "Ugh, and a good riddance if he has, I say," muttered Rince. "Master Rince," said Reepicheep, "you never spoke a word that had become less you. The creature is no friend of mine, but he is of the Queen's blood, and while he is of one of our fellowship, it is certain our honor to find him and to avenge him if he is dead." "Of course, we've got to find him, if we can," said Caspian wearily. "That's the nuisance of it. It means a search party and endless trouble. Bother Eustace." Meanwhile, Eustace slept and slept and slept. What woke him was a pain in his arm. The moon was shining in at the mouth of the cave, and the bed of treasure seemed to have grown much more comfortable. In fact, he could hardly feel it at all. He was puzzled by the pain in his arm at first, but presently it occurred to him that the bracelet which had shoved up his elbow had become strangely tight. His arm must have swollen while he was asleep. It was his left arm. He moved his right arm in order to feel his left, but stopped before he had moved it an inch and bit his lip in terror. For just in front of him, and a little on his right, where the moonlight fell clear on the floor of the cave, he saw a hideous shape moving. He knew that shape. It was a dragon's claw. It had moved as he moved his hand, and became still when he stopped moving his hand. "Oh, what a fool I've been," thought Eustace. "Of course the brute had a mate, or it's lying beside me." For several minutes he did not dare to move a muscle. He saw two thin columns of smoke going up before his eyes, black against the moonlight, just as there had been smoke coming from the dragon's nose before it died. This was so alarming that he held his breath. The 2 columns of smoke vanished. When he could hold his breath no longer, he let it out stealthily. Instantly, 2 jets of smoke appeared again, but even yet, he had no idea of the truth. Presently, he decided that he would edge very cautiously to his left and try to creep out of the cave. Perhaps the creature was asleep, and anyway, it was his only chance. But of course, before he edged to the left, he looked to the left. Oh, horror. There was a dragon's claw on that side, too. No one will blame Eustace if at this moment he shed tears. He was surprised at the size of his own tears as he saw them splashing onto the treasure in front of him. They also seemed strangely hot. Steam went up from them. But there was no good crying. He must try to crawl out from between the 2 dragons. He began extending his right arm. The dragon's foreleg and claw on his right went through exactly the same motion. Then he thought he would try his left. The dragon limb on that side moved too. 2 dragons, one on each side, mimicking whatever he did. His nerve broke, and he simply made a bolt for it. There was such a clatter and rasping and clinking of gold and grinding of stones as he rushed out of that cave. And he thought they were both following him. He daren't look back. He rushed to the pool. The twisted shape of the dead dragon lying in the moonlight would have been enough to frighten anyone, but now he hardly noticed it. His idea was to get into the water, but just as he reached the edge of the pool, 2 things happened. First of all, it came over him like a thunderclap that he had been running on all 4s, and why on earth had he been doing that? And secondly, as he bent towards the water, he thought for a second that yet another dragon was staring up at him out of the pool. But in an instant, he realized the truth. The dragon face in the pool was his own reflection. There was no doubt of it. It moved as he moved. It opened and shut its mouth as he opened and shut his mouth. He had turned into a dragon while he was asleep. Sleeping on a dragon's hoard with greedy, dragonish thoughts in his heart, he had become a dragon himself. That explained everything. There had been no 2 dragons beside him in the cave. The claws to right and left had been his own right and left claws. The 2 columns of smoke had been coming from his own nostrils. As for the pain in his left arm, or what had been his left arm, he could now see what had happened by squinting with his left eye. The bracelet, which had fitted very nicely on the upper arm of a boy, was far too small for the thick, stumpy foreleg of a dragon. It had sunk deeply into his scaly flesh, and there was a throbbing bulge on each side of it. He tore at the place with the dragon's teeth, but could not get it off. In spite of the pain, his first feeling was one of relief. There was nothing to be afraid of anymore. He was a terror himself now, and nothing in the world but a knight, and not all of those, would dare to attack him. He could get even with Caspian and Edmund now. But the moment he thought this, he realized that he didn't want to. He wanted to be friends. He wanted to get back among humans and talk and laugh and share things. He realized that he was a monster cut off from the whole human race. An appalling loneliness came over him. He began to see that the others had not really been friends or fiends at all. He began to wonder if he himself had been such a nice person as he had always supposed. He longed for their voices. He would have been grateful for a kind word even from Reepicheep. When he thought of this, the poor dragon that had been Eustace lifted up its voice and wept. A powerful dragon crying its eyes out under the moon in a deserted valley is a sight and a sound hardly to be imagined. At last, he decided he would try to find his way back to shore. He realized now that Caspian would never have sailed away and left him, and he felt sure that somehow or other he would be able to make people understand who he was. He took a long drink, and then, I know this sounds shocking, but it isn't if you think it over, he ate nearly all the dead dragon. He was halfway through it before he realized what he was doing. For, you see, though his mind was the mind of Eustace, his tastes and his digestion were dragonish. And there is nothing a dragon likes so well as fresh dragon. That is why you so seldom find more than one dragon in the same country. Then he turned to climb out of the valley. He began the climb with a jump, and as soon as he jumped, he found that he was flying. He had quite forgotten about his wings, and it was a great surprise to him. The first pleasant surprise he had had for a long time. He rose high into the air and saw innumerable mountain tops spread out beneath him in the moonlight. He could see the bay like a silver slab and the dawn treader lying at anchor, and campfires twinkling in the woods beside the beach. From a great height he launched himself down towards them in a single glide. Lucy was sleeping very soundly, for she had sat up till the return of the search party in hope of good news about Eustace. It had been led by Caspian, and had come back late and weary. Their news was disquieting. They had found no trace of Eustace, but had seen a dead dragon in a valley. They tried to make the best of it, and everyone assured everyone else that there were not likely to be more dragons about, and that one which was dead at about 3 o'clock that afternoon, which was when they had seen it, would hardly have been killing people a very few hours before. Unless it ate the little brat and died of him. He'd poison anything, said Rince, but he said this under his breath and no one heard it. But later in the night, Lucy was wakened, very softly, and found the whole company gathered close together and talking in whispers. "What is it?" said Lucy. "We must all show great constancy," Caspian was saying. "A dragon has just flown over the treetops and lighted on the beach. Yes, I am afraid it is between us and the ship. And arrows are no use against dragons, and they're not at all afraid of fire." "With your majesty's leave," began Reepicheep. "No, Reepicheep," said the king very firmly. "You are not to attempt a single combat with it. And unless you promise to obey me in this matter, I'll have you tied up. We must just keep close watch, and as soon as it is light, go down to the beach and give it battle. I will lead. King Edmund will be on my right, and the Lord Drinian on my left. There are no other arrangements to be made. It will be light in a couple of hours. In an hour's time, let a meal be served out and what is left of the wine, and let everything be done silently." "Perhaps it will go away," said Lucy. "It'll be worse if it does," said Edmund, "because then we shan't know where it is. Oh, if there's a wasp in the room, I'd like to be able to see it." The rest of the night was dreadful, and when the meal came, though they knew they ought to eat, many found that they had very poor appetites, and endless hours seemed to pass before the darkness thinned, and birds began chirping here and there, and the world got colder and wetter than it had been all night, and Caspian said, "Now for it, friends." They got up, all with swords drawn, and formed themselves into a solid mass with Lucy in the middle and Reepicheep on her shoulder. It was nicer than the waiting about, and everyone felt fonder of everyone else than at ordinary times. A moment later they were marching. It grew lighter as they came to the edge of the wood, and there on the sand, like a giant lizard or a flexible crocodile or a serpent with legs, huge and horrible and humpy, lay the dragon. But when it saw them, instead of rising up and blowing fire and smoke, the dragon retreated. You could almost say it waddled back into the shallows of the bay. "What's it wagging its head like that for?" said Edmund. "And now it's nodding," said Caspian. "And there's something coming from its eyes," said Drinian. "Oh, can't you see?" said Lucy. "It's crying. Oh, those are tears." I shouldn't trust that, ma'am," said Drinian. "That's what crocodiles do, to put you off your guard." "It wagged its head when you said that," remarked Edmund, "just as if it meant no. Look, there it goes again." "Do you think it understands what we're saying?" asked Lucy. The dragon nodded its head violently. Reepicheep slipped off Lucy's shoulders and stepped to the front. "Dragon," came his shrill voice, "can you understand speech?" The dragon nodded. "Can you speak?" It shook its head. "Then," said Reepicheep, "it is idle to ask you your business, but if you will swear friendship with us, raise your left foreleg above your head." It did so, but clumsily, because that leg was sore and swollen with the golden bracelet. "Oh, look," said Lucy, "there's something wrong with its leg. The poor thing, that's probably what it was crying about. Perhaps it came to us to be cured, like in Androcles and the lion. Be careful, Lucy, said Caspian. It's a very clever dragon, but it may be a liar. Lucy had, however, already run forward, followed by Reepicheep, as fast as his short legs could carry him, and then, of course, the boys and Drinian came too. Show me your poor paw, said Lucy. I might be able to cure it. The dragon, that had been Eustace, held out its sore leg gladly enough, remembering how Lucy's cordial had cured him of seasickness before he became a dragon. But he was disappointed. The magic fluid reduced the swelling and eased the pain a little, but it could not dissolve the gold. Everyone had now crowded round to watch the treatment, and Caspian suddenly exclaimed, "Look!" He was staring at the bracelet. So that is the end of Chapter 6. Mono Baker, welcome to the Legion. Honored to have you here. They should leave Eustace there? No, they are honorable people, Father Meme. Honorable people.
Next chapter now.
We're gonna get started. Oh, all right, you guys ready? We're gonna keep going. Chapter 7. How the adventure ended. Look at what? Said Edmund. Look at that device on the gold, said Caspian. A little hammer with a diamond above it like a star, said Drinian. Why, I've seen that before. Seen it, said Caspian. Why, of course you have. It is the sign of a great Narnian house. That is the Lord Octesian's arm ring. Villain, said Reepicheep to the dragon. Have you devoured a Narnian lord? But the dragon shook his head violently. Or perhaps, said Lucy, this is the Lord Octesian, turned into a dragon, under an enchantment, you know. Oh, it needn't be either, said Edmund. All dragons collect gold, but I think it's a safe guess that Octesian got no further than this island. Are you the Lord Octesian? Said Lucy to the dragon, and then when it sadly shook its head, are you someone enchanted? Someone human, I mean. It nodded violently. And then someone said... People disputed afterward whether Lucy or Edmund said it first. You're not Eustace by any chance? And Eustace nodded his terrible dragon head and thumped his tail in the sea, and everyone skipped back. Some of the sailors with words that I will not be putting down in writing, to avoid the enormous and boiling tears which flowed from his eyes. Lucy tried hard to console him, and even screwed up her courage to kiss the scaly face, and nearly everyone said hard luck, and several assured Eustace that they would all stand by him, and many said there was sure to be some way of disenchanting him, and they'd have him as right as rain in a day or two. And of course, they were all very anxious to hear his story, but he couldn't speak. More than once in the days that followed, he attempted to write it for them on the sand, but this never succeeded. In the first place, Eustace, never having read the right books, had no idea how to tell a story straight. And for another thing, the muscles and nerves of the dragon's claws that he had to use had never learned to write, and were not built for writing anyway. As a result, he never got nearly to the end before the tide came in and washed away all the writing except the bits he had already trodden on or accidentally swished out with his tail, and all that anyone had seen would be something like this. The dots are for the bits he had smudged out. I went to slee Ragos dragons, cave 'cause it was dead, and ailing so heart woke up and get off my arm, oh bother. It was, however, clear to everyone that Eustace's character had been rather improved by becoming a dragon. He was anxious to help. He flew over the whole island and found that it was all mountainous and inhabited only by wild goats and droves of wild swine. Of these he brought back many carcasses as provisions for the ship. He was a very humane killer too, for he could dispatch a beast with one blow of his tail so that it didn't know, and presumably still doesn't know, it had been killed. He ate a few himself, of course, but always alone, for now that he was a dragon, he liked his food raw, but he could never bear to let others see him at his messy meals. And one day, flying slowly and wearily, but in great triumph, he bore back to camp a great tall pine tree which he had torn up by the roots in a distant valley, and which could be made into a capital mast. And in the evening, if it turned chilly, as it sometimes did after the heavy rains, he was a comfort to everyone, for the whole party would come and sit with their backs against his hot sides and get well warmed and dried, and one puff of his fiery. Sometimes he would take a select party for a fly on his back so that they could see wheeling below them the green slopes, the rocky heights, the narrow pit-like valleys, and far out over the sea to the eastward a spot of darker blue on the blue horizon, which might be land. You out. Sorry, children were fighting. You know how it is. The pleasure, quite new to him, of being liked. Oh, hold on, we got an ad break. Hi, YouTube. We have an ad break on Twitch, so we're going to take a brief pause. So now's a good time to get a drink, go to the bathroom, do that kind of thing, about a minute and a half, and we'll be back. Make sure they know. Ad break. Alright. Are you done, YouTube? No more fighting. Oh, I gotta drink myself. Here we go. We'll start back at the beginning of that paragraph. Now. Big stretches. Alright, we got another about half a minute. Oh. Hope you guys are enjoying so far. Oh, it's good times. Great oldies. Bless you.
Look, they really want you hydrated.
Hey, thank you, Father Mame. I'll catch a drink here, too. Okay, everybody should be back from the ads now. Everybody back? We good? Hope you are. Big stretch. All right, we're gonna go. We're gonna continue. Thank you for hanging out with me for that. I wish I could shut them off, but I can't. Fast as lightning. Well, let's just make sure everybody's back. If y'all are back, just let me know in chat real quick for me, just so I know. Well, at least he's making himself useful as a dragon since he was useless as a human. That's, I mean, you know, yeah, he wasn't good for much except for bickering, arguing. But you know what? People go through changes. You know, people can change. Most people don't, but some people can. And in Eustace's case, you know, he's getting a crash course, kind of similar to Saul, you know, who became Paul in the Bible after seeing Jesus. So it's kind of similar to that. Yeah. But wait until we're done. Because I'm about to start reading again. And generally being a grade A. Yeah. Well, we've all, you know, I remember being young and foolish.
I would strongly advise to be careful with the language.
He didn't spell it. Relax. We're going to start up again. So rules are back in place, right, you two? Right? All right, here we go. All right, here we are. So the pleasure, quite new to him, of being liked and still more of liking other people was what kept Eustace from despair. For it was very dreary being a dragon. He shuddered whenever he caught sight of his own reflection as he flew over a mountain lake. He hated the huge bat-like wings, the saw-edged ridge on his back, and the cruel, curved claws. He was almost afraid to be alone with himself, and yet he was ashamed to be with the others. On the evenings when he was not being used as a hot bottle, he would slink away from the camp and lie curled up like a snake between the wood and the water. On such occasions, greatly to his surprise, Reepicheep was his most constant comforter. The noble mouse would creep away from the merry circle at the campfire and sit down by the dragon's head, well to the windward to be out of the way of his smoky breath. There, he would explain that what had happened to Eustace was a striking illustration of the turn of fortune's wheel, and that if he had had Eustace as his own house in Narnia, it was really a hole, not a house, and the dragon's head, let alone his body, would not have fitted in it. He could show him more than 100 examples of emperors, kings, dukes, knights, poets, lovers, astronomers, philosophers, and magicians who had fallen from prosperity into the most distressing circumstances, and of whom many had recovered and lived happily ever afterward. It did not perhaps seem so very comforting at the time, but it was kindly meant, and Eustace never forgot it. But of course, what hung over everyone like a cloud was the problem of what to do with their dragon when they were ready to sail. They tried not to talk of it when he was there, but he couldn't help overhearing things like, would he fit all along one side of the deck, and we'd have to shift all the stores to the other side down below so as to balance, or would towing him be a good idea, or would he be able to keep up by flying, and most often of all, but how are we to feed him? And poor Eustace realized more and more that since the first day he came on board, he had been an unmitigated nuisance, and that he was now a greater nuisance still. And this ate into his mind, just as that bracelet ate into his foreleg. He knew that it only made it worse to tear at it with his great teeth, but he couldn't help tearing now and then, especially on hot nights. About 6 days after they had landed on Dragon Island, Edmund happened to wake up very early one morning. It was just getting gray so that he could see the tree trunks if they were between you and the bay, but not on the other direction. As he woke, he thought he heard something moving. So he raised himself on one elbow and looked about him, and presently he thought he saw a dark figure moving on the seaward side of the wood. The idea that at once occurred to him in his mind was, are we so sure there are no natives on this island after all? Then he thought it was Caspian. It was about the right size, but he knew that Caspian had been sleeping next to him and could see that he hadn't moved. Edmund made sure that his sword was in its place and then rose to investigate. All right, we'll pause for a second. Somebody rang the doorbell, apparently. Let me go check it. It's probably a salesman. You know how. Alright, it was the mail. How about that? Alright. Sorry. Anyway, here we go. So, alright. About 6 days after they had landed on Dragon Island, Edmund happened to wake up very early one morning. It was just getting gray, so that he could see the tree trunks if they were between you and the bay, but not in the other direction. As he woke, he thought he heard something moving, so he raised himself on one elbow and looked about him, and presently he thought he saw a dark figure moving on the seaward side of the wood. The idea that at once occurred to his mind was, are we so sure there are no natives on this island after all? Then he thought it was Caspian. It was about the right size, but he knew that Caspian had been sleeping next to him, and he could see that he hadn't moved. Edmund made sure that his sword was in its place and then rose to investigate. He came down softly to the edge of the wood, and the dark figure was still there. He saw now that it was too small for Caspian and too big for Lucy. It did not run away, and Edmund drew his sword and was about to challenge the stranger when the stranger said in a low voice, "Is that you, Edmund?" "So who are you?" he said. "Don't you know me?" said the other. It's me, Eustace." "By Jove," said Edmund. "So it is, my dear chap." "Hush," said Eustace, and lurched as if he were going to fall. "Hello," said Edmund, steadying him. "What's up? Are you ill?" Eustace was silent for so long that Edmund thought he was fainting, but at last he said, "It's been ghastly. You don't know, but it's all right now. Could we go and talk somewhere? I don't want to meet the others just yet." "Oh, yes, rather. Any way you like," said Edmund. "We can go and sit on the rocks over there. I say, I am glad to see you. Looking yourself again. You must have had a pretty beastly time." They went to the rocks and sat down looking out across the bay while the sky got paler and paler, and the stars disappeared except for one very bright one low down and near the horizon. I won't tell you how I became a dragon till I can tell the others and get it all over," said Eustace. "By the way, I didn't even know it was a dragon until I heard you all using the word when I turned up here the other morning. I want to tell you how I stopped being one." "Well, fire ahead," said Edmund. "Well, last night I was more miserable than ever, and that beastly armoring was hurting like anything. Is that all right now?" Eustace laughed, a different laugh from any Edmund had heard him give before, and slipped the bracelet easily off his arm. "There it is," he said, "and anyone who likes can have it as far as I'm concerned. Well, as I say, I was lying awake and wondering what on earth would be coming of me, and then, but mind you, it may have been all a dream. I don't know." "Well, go on," said Edmund with considerable patience. "Well, anyway, I looked up and saw the very last thing I expected. A huge lion coming slowly towards me. And one queer thing was that there was no moon last night, but there was moonlight where the lion was. So it came nearer and nearer. I was terribly afraid of it. You may think that, being a dragon, I could have knocked any lion out easily enough, but it wasn't that kind of fear. I wasn't afraid of it eating me. I was just afraid of it, if you can understand. Well, it came close up to me and looked straight into my eyes, and I shut my eyes tight, but that wasn't any good because it told me to follow it." "You mean it spoke to you?" I don't know. Now that you mention it, I don't think it did. But it told me all the same. And I knew I'd have to do what it told me, so I got up and followed it. And it led me along into the mountains. And there was always the moonlight over and round the lion wherever we went. So at last we came to the top of a mountain I'd never seen before. And on top of this mountain there was a garden, trees and fruit and everything. In the middle of it, there was a well. I knew it was a well because you could see the water bubbling up from the bottom of it, but it was a lot bigger than most wells, like a very big round bath with marble steps going down into it. And, well, the water was as clear as anything, and I thought if I could get in there, bathe, and it would ease the pain in my leg. But the lion told me I must undress first. Mind you, I don't know if he said any words out loud or not. Well, I was just going to say that I couldn't undress because I hadn't any clothes on, when I suddenly thought that the dragons are snakes sort of things, and snakes can cast their skins. Oh, of course, I thought and that's what the lion means. So I started scratching myself, and my scales began coming off all over the place. And then I scratched a little deeper, and instead of just scales coming off here and there, well, my whole skin started peeling off beautifully, like it does after an illness, or as if I was a banana. Well, in a minute or two, I just stepped out of it. I could see it lying there beside me, looking rather nasty. It was most lovely feeling, so I started to go down into the well for my bath. But just as I was about to put my feet into the water, I looked down and saw that they were all hard and rough and wrinkled and scaly, just as they had been before. Oh, that's all right, said I. It only means I had another smaller suit on underneath the first one, and I'll just have to get out of it too. So I scratched and tore again, and this underskin peeled off beautifully, and out I stepped and left it lying beside the other one and went down to the well for my bath. Well, exactly the same thing happened again.
Hydrate.
And I thought to myself, oh dear, how many skins have I got to take off? For I was longing to bathe my leg. So I scratched away for the third time and got off a third skin, just like the other two, and stepped off of it. But as soon as I looked at myself in the water, I saw it had been no good. Then the lion said, but I don't know if it spoke. Well, you will have to let me undress you. I was afraid of its claws, I can tell you, but I was pretty nearly desperate now, so I just lay flat down on my back to let him do it. The very first tear he made was so deep that I thought it might have gone right into my heart. And when he began pulling the skin off, it hurt worse than anything I've ever felt. The only thing that made me able to bear it was just the pleasure of feeling the stuff peel off, you know? If you've ever picked the scab of a sore place, it hurts like a billy-o, but it is such fun to see it coming away. Oh, I know exactly what you mean, said Edmund. Well, he peeled the beastly stuff right off, just as I thought I'd done it myself the other 3 times, only they hadn't hurt. And here it lies lying on the grass, only ever so much thicker and darker and more knobbly looking than the others had been. And there was I, as smooth and soft and peeled switch and smaller than I'd been. Then he caught hold of me. I didn't like that much, for I was very tender underneath now that I'd no skin on, and threw me into the water. It smarted like anything, but only for a moment. And after that, it became perfectly delicious, and as soon as I started swimming and splashing, I found that all the pain had gone from my arm. And then I saw why. I turned into a boy again. You'd think me simply phony if I told you how I felt about my own arms. I know they've no muscle and they're pretty moldy compared with Caspian's, but oh, I was so glad to see them. And after a bit, the lion took me out and dressed me. Dressed you? With his paws? Well, I don't know exactly remember that bit, but he did somehow or other in new clothes. The same I've got on now, as a matter of fact, and then suddenly I was back here, which is what makes me think it must have been a dream. Oh no, it wasn't a dream, said Edmund. Why not? Well, they're the clothes for one thing, and you've been, well, undragoned for another. What do you think it was? Asked Eustace. I think you've seen Aslan, said Edmund. Aslan, said Eustace. I've heard that name mentioned several times since we joined the Dawn Treader, and I felt, I don't know what, I hated it. But I was hating everything then. And by the way, I'd like to apologize. I'm afraid I've been pretty beastly. No, that's all right, said Edmund. Between ourselves, you haven't been as bad as I was on my first trip to Narnia. You were only an ass, but I was a traitor. Well, don't tell me about it then, said Eustace. But who is Aslan? Do you know him? Well, he knows me, said Edmund. He's the great lion, the son of the Emperor beyond the sea, who saved me and saved Narnia. We've all seen him. Lucy sees him most of often, and it may have been Aslan's country we are all sailing to. Neither said anything for a while. The last bright star had vanished, and though they could not see the sunrise because of the mountains on their right, they knew it was going on because the sky above them and the bay before them turned the color of roses. Then some bird of the parrot kind screamed in the wood behind them. They heard movements among the trees and finally a blast on Caspian's horn. The camp was astir. Great was the rejoicing when Edmund and the restored Eustace walked into the breakfast circle round the campfire, and now, of course, everyone heard the earlier part of his story. People wondered whether the other dragon had killed the Lord Octesian several years ago, or whether Octesian himself had been the old dragon. The jewels with which Eustace had crammed his pockets in the cave had disappeared along with the clothes he had then been wearing, but no one, least of all Eustace himself, felt any desire to go back to that valley for more treasure. In a few days now, the Dawn Treader, remastered, repainted, and well stored, was ready to sail. Before they embarked, Caspian caused to be cut on a smooth cliff facing the bay the words, "Dragon Island, discovered by Caspian the 10th, King of Narnia, etc., in the 4th year of his reign. Here, as we suppose, the Lord Octesian had his death." It would be nice and fairly nearly true to say that, from that time forth, Eustace was a different boy. To be strictly accurate, he began to be a different boy. He had relapses. There were still many days when he could be very tiresome, but most of those I shall not notice. The cure had begun. The Lord Octesian's arm ring had a curious fate. Eustace did not want it, and offered it to Caspian, and Caspian offered it to Lucy. She did not care about having it either. "Very well, then catch as catch can," said Caspian, and flung it up in the air. This was when they were all standing looking at the inscription. Up went the ring, flashing in the sunlight, and caught and hung as neatly as a well-thrown quote on a little projection on the rock. No one could climb up to get it from below, and no one could climb down to get it from above. And there, for all I know, it is still hanging still, and may hang till that world ends. It's coming. It's okay, it's coming. It's alright, relax, relax. Alright, here we go. Chapter 8. 2 Narrow Escapes. Everyone was cheerful as the Dawn Treader sailed from Dragon Island. They had fair winds as soon as they were out of the bay, and came early next morning to the unknown land which some of them had seen when flying over the mountains while Eustace was still a dragon. It was a low green island, inhabited by nothing but rabbits and a few goats. But from the ruins of stone huts and from blackened places where fires had been, they judged that it had been peopled not long ago. There were also some bones and broken weapons. "Pirates' work," said Caspian. "Or the dragons," said Edmund. The only other thing they found here was a little skin boat, or coracle, on the sands. It was made of hide stretched over a wicker framework. It was a tiny boat, barely 4 feet long, and the paddle which still lay in it was in proportion. They thought that either it had been made for a child, or else that the people of that country had been dwarfs. Reepicheep decided to keep it, as it was just the right size for him, so it was taken on board. They called that land Burnt Island, and sailed away before noon. For some 5 days they ran before a southern wind, out of sight of all lands and seeing neither fish nor gull. Then they had a day that rained hard till the afternoon. Eustace lost 2 games of chess to Reepicheep, and began to get like his old and disagreeable self again, and Edmund said he wished they could have gone to America with Susan. Then Lucy looked out of the stern windows and said, "Hello, I do believe it's stopping. And what's that?" They all stumbled up to the poop at this and found that the rain had stopped, and that Drinian, who was on watch, was also staring hard at something astern, or rather at several things. They looked a little like smooth, rounded rocks, a whole line of them with intervals of about 40 feet in between. "Well, but they can't be rocks," said Drinian, saying, "because they weren't there 5 minutes ago." "And one's just disappeared," said Lucy. "Yes, and there's another one coming up," said Edmund. "Oh, and nearer," said Eustace. "Hang it," said Caspian, "the whole thing is moving this way." "And moving a great deal quicker than we can sail, sire," said Drinian. "It'll be up with us in a minute." They all held their breaths, for it is not at all nice to be pursued by an unknown something either on land or sea. But what it turned out to be was far worse than anyone had suspected. Suddenly, only about the length of a cricket pitch from their port side, an appalling head reared itself out of the sea. It was all greens and vermilions with purple blotches except where shellfish clung to it, and shaped rather like a horse, though without ears. It had enormous eyes made for staring through the dark depths of the ocean, and a gaping mouth filled with double rows of sharp, fish-like teeth. It came up on what they first took to be a huge neck, but as more and more of it emerged, everyone knew that it was not its neck, but its body, and that at last they were seeing what so many people have foolishly wanted to see, the great sea serpent. The folds of its gigantic tail could be seen far away, rising at intervals from the surface, and now its head was towering up higher than the mast. Every man rushed to his weapon, but there was nothing to be done. The monster was out of reach. "Shoot! Shoot!" cried the master bowman, and several obeyed, but the arrows glanced off the sea serpent's hide as if it was iron-plated. Then, for a dreadful minute, everyone was still, staring up at its eyes and mouth and wondering where it would pounce. But it didn't pounce. It shot its head forward across the ship on a level with the yard of the mast. Now its head was just beside the fighting top. Still, it stretched and stretched till its head was over the starboard bulwark. Then down it became to come, and not onto the crowded deck, but into the water, so that the whole ship was under an arc of serpent. And almost at once that arc began to get smaller. Indeed, on the starboard, the sea serpent was now almost touching the Dawn Treader's side. Eustace, who had really been trying very hard to behave well till the rain and the chest put him back, now did the first brave thing he had ever done. He was wearing a sword that Caspian had lent him. As soon as the serpent's body was near, enough on the starboard side, he jumped onto the bulwark and began hacking at it with all his might. It is true that he accomplished nothing, but beyond breaking Caspian's second-best sword into bits, but it was a fine thing for a beginner to have done. Others would have joined him if at that moment Reepicheep had not called out, "Don't fight! Push!" It was so unusual for the mouse to advise anyone not to fight that even in that terrible moment every eye turned to him, and when he jumped up on the bulwark forward of the snake and set his little furry back against its scaly side and began pushing as hard as he could, quite a number of people saw what he meant and rushed to both sides of the ship to do the same. And when a moment later the sea serpent's head appeared again, this time on the port side, and this time with its back to them, then everyone understood. The brute had made a loop of itself around the Dawn Treader and was beginning to draw the loop tight. When it got quite right, snap! There would be a floating matchwood where the ship had been, and it could pick them out of the water one by one. Their only chance was to push the loop backward till it slid over the stern, or else, to put the same thing another way, to push the ship forward out of the loop. Reepicheep alone had of course no more chance of doing this than of lifting up a cathedral. He had nearly killed himself with trying before others shoved him aside. Very soon the whole ship's company, except Lucy and the mouse, which was fainting, was in two long lines along the two bulwarks, each man's chest to the back of the man in front, so that the weight of the whole line was in the last man pushing for their lives. For a few sickening seconds, which seemed like hours, nothing appeared to happen. Joints cracked, sweat dropped, breath came in grunts and gasps, and then they felt that the ship was moving. They saw that the snake loop was further from the mast than it had been, but they also saw that it was smaller, and now the real danger was at hand. Could they get it over the poop, or was it already too tight? Yes, it would just fit. It was resting on the poop rails. A dozen or more sprang up on the poop. This was far better. The sea serpent's body was so low now that they could make a line across the poop and push side by side. Hope rose high till everyone remembered the high, carved stern, the dragon tail of the Dawn Treader. It would be quite impossible to get the brute over that. "An axe!" cried Caspian hoarsely, "and still shove!" Lucy, who knew where everything was, heard him where she was standing in the main deck staring up at the poop. In a few seconds, she had been below, got the axe, and was rushing up the ladder to it. But just as she reached the top, there came a great crashing noise like a tree coming down, and the ship rocked and darted forward. For at that very moment, whether because the sea serpent was being pushed so hard, or because it foolishly decided to draw the noose tight, the whole of the carved stern broke off and the ship was free. The others were too exhausted to see what Lucy saw. There, a few yards behind them, the loop of sea serpent's body got rapidly smaller and disappeared into a splash. Lucy always said, but of course she was very excited at the moment, and it may have been only imagination, that she saw a look of idiotic satisfaction on the creature's face. What is certain is that it was a very stupid animal. For instead of pursuing the ship, it turned its head round and began nosing all along its body, as if it expected to find the wreckage of the Dawn Treader there. But the Dawn Treader was already well away, running before a fresh breeze, and the men lay and sat panting and groaning all about the deck, till presently they were able to talk about it, and then to laugh about it. And when some rum had been served out, they even raised a cheer, and everyone praised the valor of Eustace, though it hadn't done any good, and of Reepicheep. After this, they sailed for 3 days more, and saw nothing but sea and sky. On the 4th day, the wind changed to the north, and the seas began to rise. But the afternoon it had nearly become a gale. But at the same time, they sighted land on their port bow. "By your leave, sire," said Drinian, "we will try to get under the lee of that country by rowing and lee in harbour, maybe till this is over." Caspian agreed, but a long row against the gale did not bring them to the land before evening. By the last light of that day, they steered into a natural harbour and anchored. Hold on, we have a ad break again. We're going to pause for just a second. Pause for just a second. You guys, yeah, if you guys are so, heck bent on that, go get the cheesecake, okay? You may miss it because I may start reading, okay? Yep. Go ahead. Anyway. An ad break. Yeah, the ad break. Let's see what you guys are talking about in chat. I have zero clue how big a cricket pitch is. Am I not high pitched enough? I've read this a long time ago, but I can't remember how far we are in the book now. So, Flying Dutch Heron. We are about halfway through the book. There's 16 chapters. We are on chapter 8. Yeah, we're reading through chapter 8 right now. Yenza, thank you for the lurk. Supporting your literacy while I get the cars worked on. Good job reading so good. Thank you, Yenza. Guys, you guys should follow Yenza. She's amazing. Hey, boo. Talking to my wife?
Hey, Shoulder Angel here. I'm supposed to tell you to drink some water.
Alright, water sipped. Thank you, I appreciate that. Flying to Charon. How are you doing today, by the way? Is this the first stream of reading this book? No, this is the second. This is the second stream reading the book. We read on Monday. Up to chapter 6, through chapter 6. So now we're on chapter 8, and we'll be reading the I figure we'll be able to finish this book tomorrow morning. I'm going to read tomorrow morning, too. And then we'll finish up the Dawn Treader. We should be able to finish the book. Girl. Hey, girl, hey. Yeah. It's all good. It's all good. But we're going to keep going here. So let's see. We were right here. So, by your leave, sire, said Drinian, we will try to get under the lee of that country by rowing and lie in harbour, maybe till this is over. Caspian agreed, but a long row against the gale did not bring them to the land before evening. By the last light of that day, they steered into a natural harbour and anchored, but no one went ashore that night. In the morning, they found themselves in the green bay of a rugged, lonely-looking country, which sloped up to a rocky summit. From the wind north beyond that summit, clouds came streaming rapidly. They lowered the boat and loaded her with any of the water casks, which were now empty. "Which stream shall we water at, Drinian?" said Caspian as he took his seat in the stern sheets of the boat. There seemed to be two coming down into the bay. Oh, it makes little odds, sire, said Drinian, but I think it's a shorter pull to that on the starboard, the eastern one. Here comes the rain, said Lucy. I should think it does, said Edmund, for it was already pelting hard. I say, let's go to the other stream. There are trees there, and we'll have some shelter. Oh, yes, let's, said Eustace. No point in getting wetter than we need. But all the time, Drinian was steadily steering to the starboard, like tiresome people in cars who continue at 40 miles an hour while you are explaining to them that they are on the wrong road. They're right, Drinian, said Caspian. Why don't you bring her head round and make for the western stream? As your majesty pleases, said Drinian a little shortly. He had had an anxious day with the weather yesterday. He didn't like the advice from landsmen, but he altered course, and it turned out afterward that it was a good thing he did. By the time they had finished watering, the rain was over, and Caspian, with Eustace, the Pevensies, and Reepicheep, decided to walk up to the top of the hill and see what could be seen. It was a stiffish climb through coarse grass and heather, and they saw neither man nor beast except seagulls. When they reached the top, they saw that it was a very small island, not more than 20 acres, and from this height the sea looked larger and more desolate than it did from the deck, or even the fighting top of the Dawn Treader. Crazy, you know, said Eustace to Lucy in a low voice, looking at the eastern horizon. Sailing on and on into that with no idea what we may get to. But he only said it out of habit, not really nastily as he would have done at one time. It was too cold to stay long on the ridge, for the wind still blew freshly from the north. Oh, don't let's go back the same way, said Lucy as they turned. Let's go along a bit and come down by the other stream, the one Drinian wanted to go to. Everyone agreed to this, and after about 15 minutes, they were at the source of the second river. It was a more interesting place than they had expected. A deep little mountain lake, surrounded by cliffs, except for a narrow channel on the seaward side, out of which the water flowed. Here, at last, they were out of the wind, and all sat down in the heather above the cliff for a rest. All sat down but one. It was Edmund, jumping up again very quickly. They go in for a sharp stone on this island, he said, groping about in the heather. Where's the wretched thing? Now I've got it. Hello? It wasn't a stone at all. It's a sword hilt. Oh, by Jove, it's a whole sword. Oh, what the rust is left of it. Oh, it must have lain here for ages. Narnian, too, by the look of it, said Caspian, and they all crowded round. I'm sitting on something, too, said Lucy. Something hard. It turned out to be the remains of a male shirt. By this time, everyone was on hands and knees, feeling in the thick heather in every direction. Their search revealed, one by one, a helmet, a dagger, and a few coins. Not Kilorman crescents, but genuine Narnian lions and trees, such as you might see any day in the marketplace of Beaver's Dam or Baruna. It looks as if this might be all that's left of one of our 7 lords, said Edmund. Just what I was thinking, said Caspian. I wonder which it was. There's nothing on the dagger to show, and I wonder how he died. And how we are to avenge him, added Reepicheep. Edmund, the only one of the party who had read several detective stories, had meanwhile been thinking. Well, look here, he said. There's something very fishy about this. He can't have been killed in a fight. Well, why not? Asked Caspian. No bones, said Edmund. An enemy might take the armor and leave the body, but who ever heard of a chap who'd won a fight carrying away the body and leaving the armor? Perhaps he was killed by a wild animal, Lucy suggested. It'd be a clever animal, said Edmund, that would take a man's male shirt off. Perhaps a dragon, said Caspian. Nothing doing, said Eustace. A dragon couldn't do it. I ought to know. Well, let's get away from the place anyway, said Lucy. She had not felt like sitting down again since Edmund had raised the question of bones. If you like, said Caspian, getting up. I don't think any of this stuff is worth taking anyway. They came down and round to the little opening where the stream came out of the lake, and stood looking at the deep water within the circle of cliffs. If it had been a hot day, no doubt, some would have been tempted to bathe, and everyone would have had a drink, Indeed, even as it was, Eustace was on the very point of stooping down and scooping up some water in his hands when Reepicheep and Lucy, both at the same moment, cried, "Look!" So he forgot about his drink and looked into the water. The bottom of the pool was made of large, grayish-blue stones, and the water was perfectly clear. And on the bottom lay a life-size figure of a man, apparently made of gold. It lay face downward with its arms stretched out above its head, and it so happened that as they looked at it, the clouds parted and the sun shone out. The golden shape was lit up from end to end. Lucy thought it was the most beautiful statue she'd ever seen. "Well," whistled Caspian, "that was worth coming to see. I wonder, can we get it out?" "We could die for it, sire," said Reepicheep. "No good at all," said Edmund. "At least, if it's really gold, solid gold, it'll be far too heavy to bring up, and that pool's 12 or 15 feet deep if it's an inch. Half a moment, though. If it's a good thing I've brought a hunting spear with me, let's see what the depth is like. Hold on to my hand, Caspian, while I lean out over the water a bit." Caspian took his hand, and Edmund, leaning forward, began to lower his spear into the water. Before it was halfway in, Lucy said, "I don't believe the statue is gold at all. It's only the light. Your spear looks just the same color." "What's wrong?" asked several voices at once, for Edmund had suddenly let go of the spear. "I couldn't hold it," said Edmund. It seems so heavy." "And there it is at the bottom now," said Caspian. "And Lucy is right. It looks just the same color as the statue." But Edmund, who appeared to be having some trouble with his boots at least, he was bending down and looking at them straightened himself all at once, and shouted out in a sharp voice that people hardly ever disobey, "Get back! Get back from the water, all of you, at once!" They all did and stared at him. "Look," said Edmund. "Look at the toes of my boots." "Oh, they look a bit yellow," began Eustace. "They're gold! Solid gold!" interrupted Edmund. "Look at them! Feel them! The leather's pulled away from it already, and they're as heavy as lead." "By Aslan," said Caspian. "You don't mean to say—" "Yes, I do," said Edmund. "That water turns things into gold. It turned the spear into gold. That's why it got so heavy, and it was just lapping against my feet. It's a good thing I wasn't barefoot. And it turned the toe caps into gold, and that poor fellow at the bottom, well, you see—" "So it isn't a statue at all," said Lucy in a low voice. "No. The whole thing is plain now. He was here on a hot day. He undressed on top of the cliff where we were sitting. The clothes have rotted away or been taken by birds to line nests with. The armor's still there, and then he dived in and—" "Oh, don't," said Lucy. "What a horrible thing." "And what a narrow shave we've had," said Edmund. "Narrow indeed," said Reepicheep. "Anyone's finger, anyone's foot, or anyone's whisker, or anyone's tail might have slipped into the water at any moment." "All the same," said Caspian, "we may as well test it." He stooped down and wrenched up a spray of heather. Then, very cautiously, he knelt beside the pool and dipped it in. It was heather that he dipped. What he drew out was a perfect model of heather made of the purest gold, heavy and soft as lead. "The king who owned this island," said Caspian slowly, and his face flushed as he spoke, "would soon be the richest of all kings of the world. I claim this land forever as a Narnian possession. It shall be called Goldwater Island, and I bind all of you to secrecy. No one must know of this, not even Drinian, on pain of death, do you hear?" "Who are you talking to?" said Edmund. "I'm no subject of yours. If anything, it's the other way round. I am one of the 4 ancient sovereigns of Narnia, and you are all under allegiance to the High King, my brother." "So, it has come to that, King Edmund, has it?" said Caspian, laying his hand on his sword hilt. "Oh, stop it, both of you," said Lucy. "That's the worst of doing anything with boys. You're all just swaggering, bullying idiots. Oh!" Her voice died away into a gasp as everyone else saw what she had. Across the gray hillside above them, gray for the heather was not yet in bloom, without noise and without looking at them, and shining as if he were in bright sunlight, the sun had in fact gone, passed with a slow pace the hugest lion that human eyes had ever seen. In describing the scene, Lucy said forward, "He was the size of an elephant," though at another time she only said, "the size of a cart horse." But it was not the size that mattered. Nobody dared to ask what it was. They knew it was Aslan. And anybody else saw how or where he went. They looked at one another like people waking from sleep. "What were we talking about?" said Caspian. "Have I been making rather an ass of myself?" "Sire," said Reepicheep, "this is a place with a curse upon it. Let us get back on board at once, and if I might have the honor of naming this island, I should call it Deathwater." "Oh, that strikes me as a very good name, Reep," said Caspian, "though now that I come to think of it, I don't know why. But the weather seems to be settling, and I dare say Drinian would like to be off. There's a lot we shall have to tell him." But in fact, they had not much to tell, for the memory of the last hour had all become confused. "Their Majesties all seem a bit bewitched when they came aboard," said Drinian to Rince, some hours later when the Dawn Treader was once more under sail and Deathwater Island already below the horizon. "Something happened to them in that place. The only thing I could get clear was that they think they found the body of one of those lords we're looking for." You don't say, Captain," answered Rince. "Well, that's 3, only 4 more. At this rate, we might be home soon after the new year, and a good thing, too. My baccy's running a bit low. Good night, sir." That is the end of Chapter 8. I'm pretty good, actually. Glad I could be here today because your schedule is in the middle of the night for me. Yes, I understand that. I'm sorry. Well, that's why we're reading these during the daytime, so glad to be of service. Glad to be of service, of course. Yes. Chapter 9. The Island of the Voices. And now the winds had so long been from the northwest began to blow from the west, and itself and every morning when the sun rose out of the sea, the curved prow of the Dawn Treader stood up right across the middle of the sun. Some thought that the sun looked larger than it had looked from Narnia, but others agreed. And they sailed and sailed before a gentle yet steady breeze, and saw neither fish nor gull, nor ship nor shore, and stores began to get low again. And it crept into their hearts that perhaps they might have come to a sea which went on forever. But when the very last day on which they thought they could risk continuing their eastward voyage dawned, it revealed right ahead between them and the sunrise a low land lying like a cloud. They made harbor in a wide bay about the middle of the afternoon and landed. It was a very different country from any they had yet seen, for when they had crossed the sandy beach, they found all silent and empty as if it were an uninhabited island. But before them there were several lawns in which the grass was as smooth and short as if it used to be in the grounds of a great English house where 10 gardeners were kept. The trees, of which were many, all stood well apart from one another, and there were no broken branches and no leaves lying on the ground. Pigeons sometimes cooed, but there was no other noise. Presently they came to a long, straight, sanded path with not a weed growing on it, and trees on either hand. Far off at the other end of this avenue they caught sight of a house, very long and gray and quiet-looking in the afternoon sun. Almost as soon as they entered this path, Lucy noticed that she had a little stone in her shoe. It had, in that unknown place, it might have been wiser for her to ask the others to wait while she took it out, but she didn't. She just dropped quietly behind and sat down to take off her shoe. Her lace had got into a knot. Before she had undone it, the others were a fair distance ahead, and by the time she had got the stone out and was putting the shoe on again, she could no longer hear them. But almost at once she heard something else. It was not coming from the direction of the house. What she heard was a thumping. It sounded as if dozens of strong workmen were hitting the ground as hard as they could with great wooden mallets. And it was very quickly coming nearer. She was already sitting with her back to a tree, and as the tree was not one she could climb, there was really nothing to do but to sit dead still and press herself against the tree and hope she wouldn't be seen. Thump, 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 and whatever it was must be very close now, for she could feel the ground shaking, but she could see nothing. She thought the thing, or things, must be just behind her, But then there came a thump on the path right in front of her. She knew it was on the path, not only by the sound, but because she saw the sand scatter as if it had been struck by a heavy blow. She could see nothing that had struck it. Then all the thumping noises drew together, about 20 feet away from her, and suddenly ceased. Then came the voice. It was really very dreadful because she could still see nobody at all. The whole of that park-like country still looked as quiet and empty as if it had looked when they first landed. Nonetheless, only a few feet away from her, a voice spoke, and what it said was, "Mates, now's our chance." Instantly, a whole chorus of other voices replied, "Hear, hear, hear him! Now's our chance, so for sure," he said. "Well done, Chief. You've never said a truer word." "What I said," continued the first voice, "is get down to the shore, and between them and their boat. Yep. And we'll let every mother's son look to his weapons, catch them when they try to put to sea." "That's the way," shouted all the other voices. "You've never made a better plan, Chief. Keep it up, Chief. You couldn't have a better plan than that." "Lively then, mates, lively," said the first voice. "Off we go." "Right again, Chief," said the others. "Couldn't have a better order. Just what we were going to say ourselves. Off we go." And immediately the thumping began again. Very loud at first, but soon fainter and fainter, till it died out into the direction of the sea. Lucy knew there was no time to sit puzzling as to what these invisible creatures might be. As soon as the thumping noises had died away, she got up and ran along the path after the others as quickly as her legs would carry her. They must at all costs be warned. While this had been happening, the others had reached the house. It was a low building, only 2 stories high, made of a beautiful mellow stone, many-windowed and partially covered with ivy. Everything was so still that Eustace said, "I think it's empty." But Caspian silently pointed to the column of smoke which rose from one chimney. They found a wide gateway open and passed through it into a paved courtyard. And it was here that they had their first indication that there was something odd about this island. In the middle of the courtyard stood a pump, and beneath the pump, a bucket. There was nothing odd about that, but the pump handle was moving up and down, though there seemed to be no one moving it. "There's some magic at work here," said Caspian. "Machinery," said Eustace. "I do believe we've come to a civilized country at last." At that moment, Lucy, hot and breathless, rushed into the courtyard behind them. In a low voice, she tried to make them understand what she had overheard, and when they had partly understood it, even the bravest of them did not look very happy. "Invisible enemies," muttered Caspian, "and cutting us off from the boat. This is an ugly furrow to plough." "You've no idea what sort of creatures they are, Lou?" asked Edmund. "How can I, Ed, when I couldn't see them?" "Did they sound like humans from their footsteps?" "I didn't hear any noise of feet, only voices, and this frightful thudding and thumping, like a mallet." "I wonder," said Reepicheep, "do they become invisible when you drive a sword into them?" "It looks as if we shall find out," said Caspian. "But let's get out of this gateway. There's one of these gentry at the pump listening to us all we say. There's one of these gentry at that pump listening to all we say." They came out and went back onto the path where the trees might possibly make them less conspicuous. "Oh, not that it's any good, really," said Eustace. "Trying to hide from people you can't see. They might be all round us." "Now, Drinian," said Caspian, "how would it be if we gave up the boat for lost, and went down to another part of the bay and signaled to the Dawn Treader to stand in and take us aboard?" Not depth for her, sire," said Drinian. "We could swim," said Lucy. "Your Majesty's all," said Reepicheep. "Hear me. It is folly to think of avoiding an invisible enemy by any amount of creeping and skulking. If these creatures mean to bring us to battle, be sure they will succeed. And whatever comes of it, I'd sooner meet them face to face than be caught by the tail." "I really think Reep is in the right this time," said Edmund. "Surely," said Lucy, "if Rince and the others on the Dawn Treader see us fighting on the shore, they'll be able to do something." "Oh, but they won't see us fighting if they can't see any enemy," said Eustace miserably. "They'll think we're just swinging our swords in the air for fun." There was an uncomfortable pause. "Well," said Caspian at last, "let's get on with it. We must go and face them. Shake hands all round. Arrow on the string, Lucy. Swords out, everyone. And now for it. Perhaps they'll parley." It was strange to see the lawns and the great trees looking so peaceful as they marched back to the beach. And when they arrived there and saw the boat lying there where they had left her, and the smooth sand with no one to be seen on it, more than one doubted whether Lucy had not merely imagined all she had told them. But before they reached the sand, a voice spoke out of the air. "No further, masters, no further," it said. "We've come to talk with you first. There's 50 of us, yes, and more here with weapons in our fists." "Hear him, chief, hear him," came the chorus. "That's our chief. Oh, you can depend on what he says. He's telling the truth, he is." "I do not see 50 warriors," observed Reepicheep. That's right, said the chief. "You don't see us, and why not? Well, because we're invisible." "Keep it up, chief, keep it up," said the other voices. "You're talking like a book. They couldn't ask for a better answer than that." "Oh, be quiet, Reep," said Caspian, and then added in a louder voice, "You invisible people, what do you want with us, and what have we done to earn your enmity?" "We want something that little girl can do for us," said the chief. The others explained that this was just what they would have said themselves. "Little girl," said Reepicheep, "the lady is a queen." We don't know nothing about queens," said the chief voice. "No more than we do, no more than we do," chimed the other voices. "But we want something she can do." "And what is it?" said Lucy. "And if it is anything against Her Majesty's honor and safety," added Reepicheep, "you will wonder to see how many we can kill before we die." "Well," said the chief voice, "it's a long story. Suppose we all sit down, yes?" The proposal was warmly approved by the other voices, but the Narnians remained standing. "Well," said the chief voice, "it's like this. You see, this island's been the property of a great magician time out of mind. And we all are, or perhaps in a manner of speaking, I might say, we were his servants. Yes. Well, to cut a long story short, this magician that I was speaking about, he told us to do something we didn't like. And why not? Well, it's because we didn't want to. Well, then this magician, he fell into a great rage, for I ought to tell you, he owned the island and he wasn't used to being crossed. He was terribly downright, Well, but let me see, where am I? Oh yes, this magician then. He goes upstairs, for you know how he kept all his magic things up there and we all lived down below. I say he goes upstairs and puts a spell on us, and an uglifying spell he did. If you saw us now, which in my opinion you may thank your stars you can't, you wouldn't believe what we looked like before we were uglified. You really wouldn't. So there we are, all so ugly we couldn't bear to look at one another. So then what did we do? Well, I'll tell you what we did. We waited till we thought the same magician would be asleep in the afternoon, and we crept upstairs and go to his magic book, as bold as brass, you see, and we wanted to see if we could do anything about this uglification. But we were all of a sweat and a tremble, so I won't deceive you, but believe me, or believe me not, I do assure you that we couldn't find anything in the way of a spell for taking off the ugliness. And what with time getting on and being afraid that the old gentleman might wake up any minute, I was all of a muck sweat, so I won't deceive you. Well, to cut a long story short, whether we did right or whether we did wrong, in the end we see a spell for making people invisible. Yeah, and we thought we'd rather be invisible than go on being as ugly as all that, and why? Well, because we like it better. Yeah. So my little girl, who's just about your little girl's age, and a sweet child she was, but, well, before she was uglified now, though, but at least said soonest mended. I say, my little girl, she says the spell, for it's got to be a little girl or else the magician himself, if you see my meaning, for otherwise it won't work. And why not? Well, That's because nothing happens. Yeah. So my Clipsy says the spell, for I ought to have told you she reads beautifully, and there were all these invisible as you could wish to see. Yeah, and I do assure you it was a relief not to see one another's faces, at first anyway, but the long and short of it were mortal tired of being invisible. And there's another thing, we never reckoned on this magician, the one I was telling you about before, going invisible too. Oh, but we haven't ever seen him since. So we don't know if he's dead or gone away or whether he's just sitting upstairs being invisible and perhaps coming down and being invisible there. And believe me, it's no manner of use listening because he's always did go about with his bare feet on, making no more noise than a great big cat. And I'll tell you all, you gentlemen straight, it's getting more than any of our nerves can stand. Such was the chief's voice's story, but very much shortened because I have left out what the other voices said. Actually, he never got out more than 6 or 7 words without being interrupted by their agreements and encouragements, which drove the Narnians nearly out of their minds with impatience. Then you can leave. Okay. When it was over, there was a very long silence. But, Lucy said at last, what's all this got to do with us? I don't understand. Oh, why, bless me if I haven't gone and left out the whole point, said the chief. Well, you've got that right, roared the other voices with great enthusiasm. No one could have left it out cleaner and better. Keep it up, Chief, keep it up. Oh, yes. Well, I needn't go over the whole story again, began the chief. Oh, no, certainly not, said Caspian and Edmund. Oh, well, then, to put it in a nutshell, said the chief, we've been waiting for ever so long for a nice little girl from foreign parts. Yes, from foreign parts, like it might be you, missy, that would go upstairs and go to the magic book and find the spell that takes off the invisibleness and say it. And we all swore at the first strangers as landed on this island, having a nice little girl with them, I mean, for if they hadn't, it'd been another matter. We wouldn't let them go away alive unless they'd done the needful thing for us. And that's why, gentlemen, if your little girl doesn't come up to scratch, it will be, well, it'll be our painful duty to cut all your throats. Yeah, merely in the way of business, as you might say, and no offense, I do hope. I don't see all your weapons, said Reepicheep. Are they invisible too? The words were scarcely out of his mouth before they heard a whizzing sound, and next moment a spear had stuck quivering in one of the trees behind them. Well, that's a spear, that is, said the chief voice. That is, Chief, that it is, said the others. You couldn't have put it better. And it came from my hand, said the chief, continued. They get invisible when they get visible when they leave us. But why do you want me to do it? Asked Lucy. Why can't one of your own people? Haven't you got any girls? Oh, we don't, said all the voices. We're not going upstairs again. In other words, said Caspian, you're asking this lady to face some danger which you daren't ask your sisters or daughters to face. Yes, that's right, said all the voices cheerfully. You couldn't have said it better. You've had some education, you have. Anyone can see that. Oh, well, of all the outrageous, began Edmund, but Lucy interrupted. Would I have to go upstairs at night, or would I do in the daylight? Oh, daylight to be sure, said the chief voice. Not at night. No one's asking you to do that. No, heavens, no. Go upstairs in the dark? Oh, no. Oh, all right, then I'll do it, said Lucy. No, she said, turning to the others. Don't try to stop me. Can't you see it's no use? There are dozens of them there. We can't fight them, and the other way, there is a chance. But a magician, said Caspian. I know, said Lucy, but we mayn't be as bad as they make it out. Don't you get the idea that these people are not very brave? Well, they're certainly not very clever, said Eustace. Look here, Lou, said Edmund. We really can't let you do a thing like this. Ask Reap. I'm sure he'll say just the same. But it's to save my own life as well as yours, said Lucy. I don't want to be cut to bits with invisible swords any more than anyone else. Her Majesty is in the right, said Reepicheep. If we had any assurance of saving her by battle, our duty would be very plain. It appears to me that we have none, and the service they ask of her is in no way contrary to Her Majesty's honor, but a noble and heroical act. If the Queen's heart moves her to risk the magician, I will not speak against it. As no one had ever known Reepicheep to be afraid of anything, he could say this without feeling at all awkward. But the boys, who had all been quite afraid often, grew very red. Nonetheless, it was such obvious sense that they had to give in. Loud cheers broke from the invisible people when the decision was announced, and the chief voice, warmly supported by all the others, invited the Narnians to come to supper and spend the night. Eustace didn't want to accept, but Lucy said, I'm sure they're not treacherous, but they're not like that at all. And the others agreed, and so, accompanied by an enormous noise of thumpings, which became louder when they reached the flagged and echoing courtyard, they all went back to the house. That's the end of chapter 9. The island by island story is giving One Piece vibes. I know. This is one of my favorite stories, though. This one's so good. So good. This guy's cracking me up. My boy Reepicheep. I love him. Reepicheep he's solid. Reepicheep is solid. We all like Reepicheep. But next up is chapter 10, The Magician's Book. So I think
That one.
no, we'll keep reading. I think we'll read through chapter 11, and then we'll call it quits for the day. So that'll give us 5 chapters left to read tomorrow, if that sounds agreeable to you. So let's see. Chapter 10, The Magician's Book. The invisible people feasted their guests royally. It was very funny to see the plates and dishes coming to the table and not to see anyone carrying them. It would have been funny even if they had moved along level with the floor, as you would expect things to do in invisible hands, but they didn't. They progressed up the long dining hall in a series of bounds or jumps. At the highest point of each jump, a dish would be about 15 feet up in the air. Then it would come down and stop quite suddenly about 3 feet above the floor. When the dish contained anything like soup or stew, the result was rather disastrous. I'm beginning to feel very inquisitive about these people, whispered Eustace to Edmund. Do you think they're human at all? More like huge grasshoppers, or giant frogs, I should say. It does look like it, said Edmund. But don't put the idea of the grasshoppers into Lucy's head. She's not too keen on insects, especially big ones. The meal would have been pleasanter if it hadn't been so exceedingly messy, and also if the conversation had not consisted entirely of agreements. The invisible people agreed about everything. Indeed, most of their remarks were the sort it would not be easy to disagree with. What I always say is, when a chap's hungry, he likes some victuals, or getting dark now, or always does at night, or even, you've come over the water, powerful wet stuff, ain't it? And Lucy could not help looking up the dark, yawning entrance to the foot of the staircase. She could see it from where she sat, and wondering what she would find when she went up those stairs next morning. But it was a good meal otherwise, with mushroom soup and boiled chickens and hot boiled ham and gooseberries, red currants, curds, cream milk, and mead. The others liked the mead, but Eustace was sorry afterward that he had drunk any. When Lucy woke up next morning, it was like waking up on the day of an examination, or a day when you were going to the dentist. It was a lovely morning, with bees buzzing in and out of her open window, and the lawn outside looking very like somewhere in England. She got up and dressed, and tried to talk and eat ordinarily at breakfast. Then, after being instructed by the chief voice about what she was to do upstairs, she bid goodbye to the others and said nothing, walked to the bottom of the stairs, and began going up them without once looking back. It was quite light. That was one good thing. There was indeed a window straight ahead of her at the top of the first flight. As long as she was on that flight, she could hear the tick-tock of a grandfather clock in the hall above. Then she came to the landing and had to turn to her left up the next flight. After that, she couldn't hear the clock anymore. Now she had come to the top of the stairs. Lucy looked and saw a long, wide passage with a large window at the far end. Apparently, the passage ran the whole length of the house. It was carved and paneled and carpeted, and very many doors opened off of it on each side. She stood still and couldn't hear the squeak of a mouse, or the buzzing of a fly, or the swaying of a curtain, or anything, except the beating of her own heart. The last doorway on the left, she had said to herself. It did seem a bit hard that it should be the last. To reach it, she would have to walk past room after room, and in any room there might be the magician, asleep, or awake, or invisible, or even dead. But it wouldn't do to think about that. She set out on her journey. The carpet was so thick that her feet made no noise. "There's nothing whatever to be afraid of yet," Lucy told herself. And certainly, it was a quiet, sunlit passage, perhaps a bit too quiet. It would have been nicer if there had not been strange signs painted in scarlet on the doors. Twisty, complicated things which obviously had a meaning, and it mightn't be a very nice meaning either. It would have been nicer still if there weren't those masks hanging on the wall. Not that they were exactly ugly, or not so very ugly, but the empty eye holes did look queer. And if you let yourself, you would soon start imagining that the masks were doing things as soon as your back was turned to them. After about the 6th door, she got her first real fright. For 1 second, she felt almost certain that a wicked little bearded face had popped out of the wall and made a grimace at her. She forced herself to stop and look at it. And it was not a face at all. It was a little mirror, just the size and shape of her own face, with hair on the top of it and a beard hanging from below it. So that when you looked in the mirror, your own face fitted into the hair and beard, and it looked as if they belonged to you. "I just caught my own reflection with the tail of my eye as I went past," said Lucy to herself. "That was all it was. Oh, it's quite harmless." But she didn't like the look of her own face with that hair and beard, and went on. I don't know what the bearded glass was for, because I am not a magician. Before she reached the last door on the left, Lucy was beginning to wonder whether the corridor had grown longer since she began her journey, and whether this was part of the magic of the house. But she got to it at last, and the door was open. It was a large room with 3 big windows, and it was lined from floor to ceiling with books. More books than Lucy had ever seen before. Tiny little books, fat and dumpy books, and bigger books than any church Bible you've ever seen. All bound in leather and smelling old and learned and magical. But she knew from her instructions that she need not bother about any of these, for the book, the magic book, was lying on a reading desk in the very middle of the room. She saw she would have to read it standing, and anyway, there were no chairs. And also that she would have to stand with her back to the door while she read it. So at once she turned to shut the door. It wouldn't shut. Some people may disagree with Lucy about this, but I think she was quite right. She said she wouldn't have minded if she could have shut the door, but that it was unpleasant to have to stand in a place like that with an open doorway right behind your back. I should have felt just the same, but there was nothing else to be done. One thing that worried her a very good deal was the size of the book. The chief voice had not been able to give her any idea whereabouts in the book the spell for making things visible came. He even seemed rather surprised at her asking. He expected her to begin at the beginning and go on till she came to it. Obviously, he had never thought that there was any other way to find a place in a book. "But it might take me days and weeks," said Lucy, looking at the huge volume. "I feel already as if I'd been in this place for hours." She went up to the desk and laid her hand on the book. Her fingers tingled when she touched it as if it were full of electricity. She tried to open it but couldn't at first. This, however, was only because it was fastened by 2 leaden clasps, and when she had undone these, it opened easily enough. And what a book it was! It was written, not printed, written in a clear, even hand with thick downstrokes and thin upstrokes, very large, easier than print, and so beautiful that Lucy stared at it for a whole minute and forgot about reading it. The paper was crisp and smooth, and a nice smell came from it. And in the margins and round the big colored capital letters at the beginning of each spell, there were pictures. There was no title page or title. The spells began straight away, and at first there was nothing very important in them. They were cures for warts by washing your hands in moonlight in a silver basin, and toothache and cramp, and a spell for taking a swarm of bees. The picture of the man with the toothache was so lifelike that it would have set your own teeth aching if you looked at it too long, and the golden bees which were dotted all round the fourth spell looked for a moment as if they were really flying. Lucy could hardly tear herself away from that first page, but when she turned over, the next was just as interesting. But I must get on, she told herself. And on she went, for about 30 pages, which, if you could have remembered them, would have taught her how to find buried treasure, how to remember things forgotten, how to forget things you wanted to forget, and how to tell whether anyone was speaking the truth. How to call up or prevent wind, fog, snow, sleet, or rain, how to produce enchanted sleeps, and how to give a man an ass's head as they did to poor Bottom. And the longer she read, the more wonderful and more real the pictures became. Then she came to a page which was such a blaze of pictures that one hardly noticed the writing. Hardly, but she did notice the first word. They were an infallible spell to make beautiful her that uttereth it beyond the lot of mortals. Lucy peered at the pictures with her face close to the page, and though they had seemed crowded and muddlesome before, she found she could now see them quite clearly. The first was a picture of a girl standing at reading desks and a huge book, and the girl was dressed exactly like Lucy. In the next picture, Lucy, for the girl in the picture was Lucy herself, was standing up with her mouth open and a rather terrible expression on her face, chanting or reciting something. In the third picture, the beauty beyond the lot of mortals had come to her. It was strange, considering how small the pictures had looked at first, that Lucy in the picture now seemed quite as big as the real Lucy, and they looked into each other's eyes, and the real Lucy looked away after a few minutes because she was dazzled by the beauty of the other Lucy, though she could still see a sort of likeness to herself in that beautiful face. And now the pictures came crowding on her thick and fast. She saw herself throned on high at a great tournament in Calormen, and all the kings of the world fought because of her beauty. After that it turned from tournaments to real wars, and all Narnia and Archenland, Telmar and Calormen, Galma and Terebinthia were laid waste with the fury of the kings and dukes and great lords who fought for her favor. Then it changed, and Lucy, still beautiful beyond the lot of mortals, was back in England, and Susan, who had always been the beauty of the family, came home from America. And the Susan in the picture looked exactly like the real Susan, only plainer and with a nasty expression. And Susan was jealous of the dazzling beauty of Lucy, but that didn't matter a bit because no one cared about anything about Susan now. "I will say the spell," said Lucy. "I don't care. I will," she said. "I don't care," because she had a strong feeling that she mustn't. But when she looked back at the opening words of the spell, there in the middle of the writing, where she felt quite sure there had been no picture before, she found the great face of a lion, of the lion, Aslan himself, staring into hers. It was painted such a bright gold that it seemed to be coming toward her out of the page, and indeed she was never quite sure afterward that it hadn't really moved a little. At any rate, she knew the expression on his face quite well. He was growling, and you could see most of his teeth. She became horribly afraid and turned over the page at once. A little later, she came to a spell which would let you know what your friends thought about you. Now, Lucy had wanted very badly to try the other spell, the one that made you beautiful beyond the lot of mortals. So she felt that, to make up for not having said it, she really would say this one. And all in a hurry, for fear of her mind would change, she said the words. Nothing will induce me to tell you what they were. Then she waited for something to happen. As nothing happened, she began looking at the picture, and all at once she saw the very last thing she expected. A picture of a third-class carriage in a train, with two schoolgirls sitting in it. She knew them at once. They were Marjorie Preston and Anne Featherstone. Only now it was much more than a picture. It was alive. She could see the telegraph posts flicking past outside the window. Then gradually, like when the radio is coming on, she could hear what they were saying. "Shall I see anything of you this term?" said Anne, "or are you still going to be all taken up with Lucy Pevensey?" "Oh, don't you know what you mean by taken up?" said Marjorie. "Oh, yes, you do," said Anne. "You were crazy about her last term." "No, I wasn't," said Marjorie. "I've got more sense than that. Not a bad little kid in her way, but I was getting pretty tired of her being the end of the term." "Well, you jolly well won't have the chance any other term," shouted Lucy. "Two-faced little beast." But the sound of her own voice at once reminded her that she was talking to a picture, and that the real Marjorie was far away in another world. "Well," said Lucy to herself, "I did think better of her than that, and I did all sorts of things for her last term, and I stuck to her when not many other girls would, and she knows it too, and to Anne Featherstone of all people. I wonder, are all my friends the same? There are lots of other pictures. No, I won't look at any more. I won't. And with a great effort, she turned over the page, but not before a large, angry tear had splashed on it. On the next page, she came to a spell, "For the refreshment of the spirit." The pictures were fewer here, but very beautiful. And what Lucy found herself reading was more like a story than a spell. It went on for 3 pages, and before she had read to the bottom of the page, she had forgotten that she was reading at all. She was living in the story as if it were real, and all the pictures were real too. When she had got to the 3rd page and came to the end, she said, "That is the loveliest story I have ever read or ever shall read in my whole life. Oh, I wish I could have gone on reading it for 10 years. At least, I'll read it over again." But here, part of the magic of the book came into play. You couldn't turn back. The right-hand pages, the ones ahead, could be turned. The left-hand pages could not. "Oh, what a shame," said Lucy. "I did so want to read it again. Well, at least I must remember it. Let's see, it was about... Oh dear, it's all fading away again. And even if this last page is going blank. Oh, this is a very queer book. How could I have forgotten? It's about a cup and a sword and a tree and a green hill. Oh, I know that much. Oh, but I can't remember. Oh, what shall I do?" And she never could remember. And ever since that day, what Lucy means by a good story is a story which reminds her of the forgotten story in the magician's book. She turned on and found to her surprise a page with no pictures at all. But the first words were a spell to make hidden things visible. She read it through to make sure all of the hard words and then said it aloud. Then she knew at once that it was working, because as she spoke, the colors came into the capital letters at the top of the page, and the picture began appearing in the margins. It was like when you hold to the fire something written in invisible ink, and the writing gradually shows up, only instead of the dingy color of lemon juice, which is the easiest visible ink, this was all gold and blue and scarlet. They were odd pictures, and contained many figures that Lucy did not much like the look of. And then she thought, "I suppose I've made everything visible now, and not only the thumpers. There might be lots of other invisible things hanging about a place like this. Oh, I'm not sure that I want to see them all." At that moment, she heard soft, heavy footfalls coming along the corridor behind her, and of course she remembered what she had been told about the magician walking in his bare feet and making no more noise than a cat. It is always better to hear or turn round than to have something creeping up behind your back, and Lucy did so. Then her face lit up still for a moment, but of course she didn't know it. She looked almost as beautiful as that other Lucy in the picture, and she ran forward with a little cry of delight and with her arms stretched out. For what stood in the doorway was Aslan himself, the lion, the highest of all high kings, and he was solid and real and warm, and he let her kiss him and bury herself in his shining mane. And from the low, earthquake-like sound that came from inside him, Lucy even dared to think that he was purring. "Oh, Aslan," she said, "it was kind of you to come." "I have been here all the time," he said, "but you have just made me visible." "Aslan," said Lucy almost a little reproachfully, "don't make fun of me as if anything I could do would make you visible." "It did," said Aslan. "Do you think I wouldn't obey my own rules?" After a little pause, he spoke again. "Child," he said, "I think you have been eavesdropping." "Eavesdropping?" "You listened to what your two schoolfellows were saying about you." "Oh, that. I never thought that was eavesdropping, Aslan. Wasn't it magic?" "Spying on people by magic is the same as spying on them in any other way. And you have misjudged your friend. She is weak, but she loves you. She was afraid of the older girl and said what she does not mean." "I don't think I'd ever be able to forget what I heard her say." "No, you won't." "Oh dear," said Lucy, "if I spoiled everything, do you mean we would have gone on being friends if it hadn't been for this, and been really great friends all our lives, perhaps, and now we never shall?" "Child," said Aslan, "did I not explain to you once before that no one is ever told what would have happened?" "Yes, Aslan, you did," said Lucy. "I'm sorry. But please..." "Speak on, dear heart." "Shall I ever be able to read that story again? The one I couldn't remember? Will you tell it to me, Aslan? Oh, do, please." "Indeed, yes. I will tell it to you for years and years. But now, come. We must meet the master of this house." And that is the end of chapter 10. We're going to read one more chapter. It's chapter 11, and then we'll be done for the day, okay?
Oh, come on.
Here we go. I'm back. What did I miss? They landed on an island. Follow me. They landed on another island, and they ran into invisible creatures that wanted Lucy to go upstairs in a magician's house, which they were afraid of, and make them uninvisible. And that's where we're set. So she's done the deed, and now, chapter 11. The Dufflepuds Made Happy. Lucy followed the great lion out into the passage, and at once she saw coming towards them an old man, barefoot, dressed in a red robe. His white hair was crowned with a chaplet of oak leaves. His beard fell to his girdle, and he supported himself with a curiously carved staff. When he saw Aslan, he bowed low and said, "Welcome, sir, to the least of your houses." "Do you grow weary, Coriacan, of ruling such foolish subjects as I have given you here?" "Oh, no," said the magician. "They are very stupid, but there is no real harm in them. I begin to grow rather fond of the creatures. Sometimes, perhaps, I am a little impatient, waiting for the day when they can be governed by wisdom instead of this rough magic." "All in good time, Coriacan," said Aslan. "Yes, all in very good time, sir," was the answer. "Do you intend to show yourself to them?" "Nay," said the lion with a little half growl that meant, Lucy thought, the same as a laugh. "I should frighten them out of their senses. Many stars will grow old and come to take their rest in islands before your people are ripe for that. And today, before sunset, I must visit Trumpkin the dwarf, where he sits in the castle of Cair Paravel, counting the days till his master Caspian comes home. I will tell him all your story, Lucy. Do not look so sad. We shall meet soon again." Please, Aslan, said Lucy, what do you call soon? I call all times soon, said Aslan. And instantly he was vanished away, and Lucy was alone with the magician. Gone, he said, and you and I quite crestfallen. It's always like that. You can't keep him. It's not as if he were a tame lion. And how did you enjoy my book? Parts of it very much indeed, said Lucy. Did you know I was there all the time? Well, of course, I knew when I let the Duffers make themselves invisible that you would be coming along presently to take the spell off again. I wasn't quite sure of the exact day. I wasn't especially on the watch this morning. You see, they had made me invisible too. Oh, and being invisible always makes me sleepy. There I'm yawning again. Are you hungry? Well, perhaps I am a little, said Lucy. I've no idea what time it is. Come, said the magician. All times may be soon to Aslan, but in my home all hungry times are 1 o'clock. He led her a little way down the passage and an open door. Passing in, Lucy found herself in a pleasant room full of sunlight and flowers. The table was bare when they entered, but it was of course a magic table, and at a word from the old man, the tablecloth, silver, plates, glasses, and food appeared. I do hope that this is what you would like, said he. I've tried to give you food more like the food of your own land, and perhaps you have had lately. Oh, it's lovely, said Lucy. And so it was, an omelet, piping hot, cold lamb and green peas, a strawberry ice, lemon squash to drink with, the meal and a cup of chocolate to follow. But the magician himself drank only wine and ate only bread. There was nothing alarming about him, and Lucy and he were soon chatting away like old friends. When will the spell work? Asked Lucy. When will the Duffers be visible again at once? Oh, yes, they're visible now, but they're probably all asleep still. They always take a rest in the middle of the day. And now that they're visible, are you going to let them off being ugly? Will you make them as they were before? Well, that's a rather delicate question, said the magician. You see, it's only they who think they were so nice to look at before. They say they've been uglified, but that isn't what I called it. Many people might say the change was for the better. Are they awfully conceited? Oh, yes, they are. At least the chief duffer is, and he's taught all the rest to be. They always believe every word he says. We'd noticed that, said Lucy. Yes, we'd got on better without him in a way. Of course, I could turn him into something else, or perhaps even put a spell on him which would make them not believe a word he said. But I don't like to do that. It's better for them to admire him than to admire nobody. Don't they admire you? Asked Lucy. Oh, no, not me, said the magician. They wouldn't admire me. What was it you uglified them for? I mean, what they call uglified. Well, they wouldn't do what they were told. Their work is to mind the garden and raise food, not for me, as they imagine, but for themselves. They wouldn't do it at all if I didn't make them. And of course, for a garden, you want water. Well, it's a beautiful spring about half a mile up the hill. And from that spring there flows a stream which comes right past the old garden. All I asked them to do was to take their water from the stream instead of trudging up to the spring with their buckets 2 or 3 times a day, tiring themselves out besides spilling half of it on the way back. But they wouldn't see it. In the end, they refused to point blank. Are they all as stupid as all that? Asked Lucy. The magician sighed. You wouldn't believe the troubles I've had with them. A few months ago, they were all for washing up the plates and knives before dinner. They said it saved time afterwards. I've caught them planting boiled potatoes to save cooking them when they're dug up. Oh, One day the cat got into the dairy and 20 of them were at work moving all the milk out. No one thought of moving the cat. Let's see, I see you've finished. Well, let's go and look at the duffers now. They can be looked at. They went into another room, which was full of polished instruments, hard to understand, such as astrolabes, oraries, chronoscopes, poecimeries, choriambuses, and theodolins. And here, when they had come to the window, the magician said, There are your duffers. You don't see anybody, said Lucy. And what are those mushroom things? The things she pointed at were dotted all over the level grass. They were certainly very like mushrooms, but far too big. The stalks about 3 feet high and the umbrellas about the same length from end to edge. When she looked carefully, she noticed too that the stalks joined the umbrellas not in the middle, but at one side, which gave an unbalanced look to them. And there was something, a sort of little bundle laying on the grass at the foot of each stalk. In fact, the longer she gazed at them, the less like mushrooms they appeared. The umbrella part was not really round as she had thought at first. It was longer than it was broad, and it widened at one end. There were a great many of them, 50 or more. The clock struck 3. Instantly, a most extraordinary thing happened. Each of the mushrooms suddenly turned upside down. The little bundles which had lain at the bottom of the stalks were heads and bodies. The stalks themselves were legs, but not 2 legs to each body. Each body had a single, thick leg right under it. Not to one side like the leg of a one-legged man, and at the end of it a single, enormous foot. A broad-toed foot with the toes curling up a little, so that it looked rather like a small canoe. She saw in a moment why they had looked like mushrooms. They had been lying flat on their backs, each with its single leg straight up in the air, and its enormous foot spread out above it. She learned afterward that this was their ordinary way of resting, for the foot kept off both rain and sun, and for a monopod to lie under its own foot is almost as good as being in a tent. Oh, the funnies, cried Lucy, bursting into laughter. Did you make them like that? Yes, I made the duffers into monopods, said the magician. He too was laughing till the tears ran down his cheeks. But watch, he added. It was worth watching. Of course, these little one-footed men couldn't walk or run as we do. They got about by jumping, like fleas or frogs, and what jumps they made, as if each big foot were a mass of springs. And with what a bounce they came down, that was what made the thumping noise which had so puzzled Lucy yesterday. For now they were jumping in all directions and calling out to one another. Hey lads, we're visible again! Visible we are, said one in a tasseled red cap, who was obviously the chief monopod. And what I say is, when chaps are visible, why they can see one another! Ha ha! And there it is, chief, cried all the others. There's the point. No one's got a clearer head than you. You couldn't have made it plainer. She caught the old man napping, that little girl dead, said the chief monopod. We've beaten him at his own game. Oh, just what we were going to say ourselves, chimed the chorus. You're going stronger than ever today, chief. Keep it up. But do they dare to talk about you like that, said Lucy. They seemed to be so afraid of you yesterday. Don't they know you might be listening? Oh, that's one of the funny things about the duffers, said the magician. 1 minute they'll talk as if I ran everything and overheard everything and was extremely dangerous. The next moment they think they can take me in by tricks that a baby would see through. Oh, bless them. Will they have to be turned back into their proper shapes? Asked Lucy. Oh, I do hope it wouldn't be unkind to leave them as they are. Do they really mind very much? They seem pretty happy. I say, I looked at that jump. What were they like before? Oh, common little dwarfs, he said. Nothing like so nice as the sort you have in Narnia. Oh, it would be a pity to change them back, said Lucy. They're so funny, and they're rather nice. Do you think it would make any difference if I told them that? Oh, I'm sure it would, if you could get it into their heads. Would you come with me and try? Oh, no. You'll get on far better without me. Well, thanks awfully for lunch, said Lucy, and turned quickly away. She ran down the stairs, which she had come up so nervously that morning, and cannoned into Edmund at the bottom. All the others were there with him waiting, and Lucy's conscience smote her when she saw their anxious faces and realized how long she had forgotten them. Oh, it's all right, she shouted. Everything's all right. The magician's a brick, and I've seen him, Aslan. After that, she went on from them like the wind and out into the garden. Here the earth was shaking with the jumps and the air ringing with the shouts of the monopods. Both were redoubled when they caught sight of her. Here she comes! Here she comes! They cried. 3 cheers for the little girl! Ah, she put it across the old gentleman properly, she did! And we're extremely regrettable, said the monopod, that we can't give you the pleasure of seeing us as we were before we were uglified, for you wouldn't believe in the difference, and that's the truth. But there's no denying we're mortal ugly now, so we won't deceive you. Ah, that we are, Chief, that we are, echoed the others, bouncing like so many toy balloons. You've said it. Oh, but I don't think you're all ugly at all, said Lucy, shouting to make herself heard. I think you look very nice. Hear her, said the monopods. True for true, missy. You see, very nice we look. You couldn't find a handsomer lot. They said this without any surprise and did not seem to notice that they had all changed their minds. She's saying, remarked the chief monopod, is how we looked very nice before we were uglified. Oh, true for true, Chief, true for true, chanted the others. That's what she says. We heard her ourselves. I did not, bawled Lucy. I said you're very nice now. Oh, so she did, said the chief monopod. Said we were very nice then, yes. Hear 'em both, said the monopods. There's a pair for you, always right. They couldn't have put it better. But we're saying just the opposite, said Lucy, stamping her foot with impatience. So you are, to be sure, so you are, said the monopods. Nothing like an opposite. Keep up, both of you. You're enough to drive anyone mad, said Lucy, and gave it up. But the monopods seemed perfectly contented, and she decided on the whole the conversation had been a success. And before everyone went to bed that evening, something else happened which made them even more satisfied with their one-legged condition. Caspian and all the Narnians went back as soon as possible to the shore to give their news to Rince and to the others on board the Dawn Treader, who were by now very anxious. And of course, the monopods went with them, bouncing like footballs and agreeing with one another in loud voices, till Eustace said, I wish the magician would make them inaudible instead of invisible. He was soon sorry he had spoken, because he had to explain that an inaudible thing is something you can't hear, and though he took a lot of trouble, he never felt sure that the monopods had really understood, and what was especially annoyed him was that they said it in the end, Hey, he can't put things the way our chief does. Oh, but you'll learn, young, and hark to him. He'll show you how to say things. There's a speaker for you. And when they reached the bay, Reepicheep had a brilliant idea. He had his little coracle lowered and paddled himself about in until the monopods were thoroughly interested. He then stood up in it and said, Worthy and intelligent monopods, you do not need boats. Each of you has a foot that will do instead. Just jump as lightly as you can on the water and see what happens. The chief monopod hung back and warned the others that they find the water powerfully wet, but one or two of the younger ones tried it almost at once. And then a few others followed their example. And at last, the whole lot did the same. It worked perfectly. The huge single foot of a monopod acted as a natural raft or boat, and when Reepicheep had taught them how to cut rude paddles for themselves, they all paddled about the bay and round the Dawn Treader, looking for all the world like a fleet of little canoes with a fat dwarf standing up in the extreme stern of each. And they had races, and bottles of wine were lowered down to them from the ship as prizes, and the sailors stood leaning over the sides and laughed till their own sides ached. The Duffers were also very pleased with their new name of monopods, which seemed to give them a magnificent name they thought they never got it right. That's what we are, they bellowed. Money puds, momonods, poddymons was just what it was on the tips of their tongue to call ourselves, oh right. But they soon got it mixed with their old name of Duffers, and finally settled down to calling themselves Dufflepuds. And that is what they will probably be called for centuries. That evening, all the Narnians dined upstairs with the magician, and Lucy noticed how different the whole top floor now looked now that she was no longer afraid of it. The mysterious signs on the doors were still mysterious, but now looked as if they had kind and cheerful meanings, and even the bearded mirror now seemed rather funny than frightening. After dinner, everything had by magic what everyone liked best to eat and drink, and after dinner, the magician did a very useful and beautiful piece of magic. He laid 2 blank sheets of parchment on the table and asked Drinian to give him an exact account of their voyage up to date. And as Drinian spoke, everything he described came out on the parchment in fine, clear lines, till at last each sheet was a splendid map of the Eastern Ocean, showing Galma, Terabithia, the 7 islands, the Lone Islands, Dragon Island, Burnt Island, Deathwater, and the land of the Duffers itself, all exactly the right sizes and in the right positions. They were the first maps ever made of those seas, and better than any that had been made since without magic. For on these, though the towns and mountains looked at first just as they would on an ordinary map, when the magician lent them a magnifying glass, you saw that they were perfect little pictures of the real things, so that you could see the very castle and slave market and streets in Narrowhaven, all very clear, though very distant, like things seen through the wrong end of a telescope. The only drawback was that the coastline of most of the islands was incomplete, for the map showed only what Drinian had seen with his own eyes. When they were finished, the magician kept one himself and presented the other to Caspian. It still hangs in his chamber of instruments at Cair Paravel. But the magician could tell them nothing more about seas or lands farther east. He did, however, tell them that about 7 years before, a Narnian ship had put in at his waters, and that she had on board the Lords Revilian, Argos, Mavramorn, and Roop. So they judged that the golden man they had seen lying in Deathwater must be the Lord Restamar. Next day, the magician magically mended the stern of the Dawn Treader, where it had been damaged by the sea serpent, and loaded her with useful gifts. There was a most friendly parting, and when she sailed 2 hours after noon, all the Dufflepuds paddled out with her to the harbor mouth and cheered until she was out of sound of their cheering. And that is the end of chapter 11. The next chapter is chapter 12, The Dark Island, which we will begin reading tomorrow morning. I hope you guys enjoyed Dark Island, the Island of Darkness, the spooky one. You enjoy? I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I hope you enjoyed listening to the Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I had a good time. Children. So we're going to say goodbye to YouTube. Goodbye, YouTube. Thank you so much for hanging out. If you guys are hanging out over there, God bless you. Goodbye. Goodbye. We'll see you guys tomorrow morning at, I'm aiming for 10, but if you don't see me start at 10, it'll probably be 11 because we're going for a walk or doing whatever. So I'll see you guys then. Farewell.